All righty. Yes, indeed. So, we've got a couple videos to get into. Let's see. First off, I think we're going to go for this one, which is from Free Media. Ben Shapiro and Anna Kasparian fight over national debt. I'm just interested in this because the idea of national debt is one that, is near and dear to my heart as a libertarian. We need to get rid of it. I'm curious to see. I mean, obviously, I would assume Ben Shapiro are going to fight over the national debt. I'm assuming Ben Shapiro has a conservative stance on this, which means we should lower the national debt, probably by cutting government spending. I'm assuming Anna Kasparian has a liberal view on this, which is the national debt doesn't matter and we need to keep spending because the programs are very important and impact people very deeply. Let me see if I am correct.
Well, a testy moment from a CNN panel featuring Anna Kasparian, Ben Shapiro, and Scott Jennings, all people I like, went viral on social media after the two conservatives, they dragged Kasparian for suggesting that foreign aid and defense spending accounted for a larger share of the deficit than entitlements.
Oof, yes, that's clearly not the case. It's not even close. Entitlements are an absolute blowout. They constitute, I'm going to just pull a number out of my head. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm going to say like 50 to 60% of the budget. I think it is the majority. I think it's like sort of like the vast majority. I think defense spending is something like 20%, let's say. I'm going to say, let me see how wrong I am.
Let's watch.
Our national debt shot up significantly after 9/11, after we started invading countries in the Middle East.
You should look at a chart.
Now we're at 30. In 2008, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on Israel, on Ukraine. I mean, honestly, these foreign conflicts have a lot more to do with our national debt as opposed to us paying into Social Security
You think Israel is a bigger portion of our budget than Social Security?
I think we spend way too much money on military aid for foreign countries.
You think Israel is more?
Do you think that Social Security is more of an issue compared to how much money we just shell out for conflicts abroad?
As a matter of expenditures and math, yes.
Both investments and defense.
So love Anna, love Scott,
Yeah.
love Ben.
Okay, so I didn't get any numbers. All right, come on, man. It's facts, not feelings. I want to get those numbers.
And I think she was mostly on totally solid ground.
Yeah.
Where she went a little awry was...
She was. Let's be totally honest here, and let's be fair to Anna. She is correct. She was talking about the issue. Ben and Scott Jennings were basically trying to frame this in terms of, numbers, in terms of dollars spent, as opposed to how much of an issue is it for regular people? How much do people care about foreign wars versus domestic issues in terms of, spending on entitlements like Social Security and these types of things? Obviously, people care way more about their Social Security benefits, about their Medicare benefits, about, all of these types of things because they directly affect you if you're taking part of those programs. And if you're not taking part in those programs, you probably know somebody who is. You probably have, a grandparent or an uncle or something like that who is on some sort of government assistance. And therefore, those issues are much more near and dear to your heart, but they are also mathematically a much, much larger portion of government expenditure. And therefore, if you actually want to deal with the national debt, unfortunately, you are going to have to deal with those programs much more so than you are with anything else. You could literally slash the entire military budget to zero. And if the other entitlement programs are still left exactly the way they are, and they're never left exactly the way they are, they're almost always growing because it's a popular issue to basically say, hey, we want to get more benefits for people. Politicians get elected on that, so it usually grows. But even if you were to keep it exactly as it were, the amount of new people going into those programs would basically mean that the debt would still go up because we would, even if you slash the military budget to zero, it would just increase slightly slower. That's it. I mean, it's crazy.
When she's more, accounting for a greater share of the deficit on the foreign spending. There's that famous pie chart we can all look at where I think Social Security and medical expenses together are about half of the deficit, and then defense is a large category. Foreign aid is actually not so much. And I'm for getting rid of all of it regardless.
Agreed.
Gone. I've never met with any spending I want to continue doing.
President Suave will abolish all these things that are still.
Indeed. Now, Ben and Scott support the spending for Israel, so that's probably why they wanted to fight.
Right. So I'm going to defend Anna a little bit on this, partly because I think it has been misrepresented somewhat what she actually said, not by you, but
I think he's probably going to mention the exact same thing that I did, which is she's talking about the issue in terms of how important is it to the American people, these entitlement programs versus foreign entanglements, wars, military spending in general, or specifically, foreign aid to Israel or Ukraine or something like that. Which do we care about more? Obviously, we care about the domestic issues, and domestic issues include entitlements. That's very clear and is borne out in the overwhelming victory of Donald Trump, is that people care more about American domestic issues right now than they do foreign wars or entanglements.
Partly by Scott and others on X, because they are presenting it as if she said the cost of aid to Israel is greater than Social Security, which it obviously isn't. But it seems to me, and I think it was reflected in that clip, her argument is a bit more nuanced than that. Her argument, as I understand it, is it is automatic that we would have to pay and want to pay Social Security to save people from penury, and Medicare and Medicaid for similar reasons, but it is optional spending, discretionary spending, that we decide to give that further inflates the debt and contributes to fiscal problems.
Okay, so this is a good point, and it's fair, but I will also say she was not making that argument. There could be larger context. I would encourage you to go find that actual clip, not only the full clip, but the full context, what happened before and after. Watch the whole thing. My guess is you're not going to do that because, who does that these days? In the clip, she does not make that argument. So I cannot refute what he's saying, and certainly this is a salient point, that the entitlement spendings are basically baked in. We're not going to get rid of them without some significant doing in Congress and the executive branch, whatever. It'd be a big deal to deal with those things, as opposed to foreign aid spending, and these types of things are kind of optional. They're on the table, and you can take them off the table most of the time, and therefore spending more money on that stuff is the stuff that's actually increasing the debt, because it's spending on indulgences that we don't need. It's like, okay, we've got to buy groceries, we've got to pay rent, we got to do this kind of stuff. Okay, that's your normal debt expenditure as a person. If you were to then say, okay, well, now I'm going to get like a big crazy car payment, I'm going to buy like a super expensive car, and I'm going to get that on top of it. Well, that you don't need that. Let's say you already have a car. You don't need a new, bigger car expenditure, and therefore that spending is, inflating the debt that you would have to be paying later off down the line. Now, the difference here is that, if we're going to extend that analogy, okay, well, that car payment would be, a very small increase compared to your house payments, your rent payments, your groceries, because you're spending an enormous, inordinate amount on groceries. You're only shopping at Erewhon, and you're only buying the most expensive Wagyu beef, and you're only your house is a $20 million mansion in Beverly Hills that you can't afford. You could never have afforded that realistically. So you're always just grabbing new credit cards to max them out so that you can pay the loan payment for that month, or the interest on the loan payment, or something like that. So actually, like, going out and buying a car, while yes, a stupid, terrible financial move, it's digging you deeper into the hole, but you've got an excavator excavating out an enormous hole right alongside you, which is like, okay, well, that's going to dig you further down, deeper, faster than this, car payment. It's a salient point. But again, I mean, she's not making that point in the clip.
As I understand her line of thinking, it is that we can't and shouldn't get rid of those other social programs. We should look at the things that we could get rid of. And she is arguing, as I would argue, and as you would argue, that spending to Israel is one of those things because it is vast and because it has also contributed and underwritten just an absolute slaughter, in my view, in Gaza.
Right, and we don't anymore get a constraint on Israel's behavior out of it. It used to be we're giving them this money, but we have some say then over their foreign policy. And Joe Biden, for whatever reason, decided to just completely ignore that part of it. And Trump has, with some kind of small interruptions to the Gaza policy, it's still basically Israel does whatever they want, which is part of the reason that among young conservatives, continuing to give money to Israel is, I'm glad to say, very, very unpopular. This is something I think Israel should give up even for its own PR with the American people, frankly.
Yeah, and I mean, and that is definitely the argument here. Now, what do you think? In terms of if you are at the top of the government, if you are in that scenario of like the well-being of America as a country and all of its citizens is my responsibility, and it is therefore my duty to enact policies that benefit them. What am I going to do? These social programs, these entitlement programs, are popular in the sense that to repeal them would be massively unpopular. And it would affect people. It would absolutely negatively affect people. So it's understandable to say, we're not going to do anything with this. We can't do anything with this. It's not true. You absolutely can get rid of those things. And I mean, I have to unfortunately argue we should at the very least, pare them back a little bit to the point where we could actually start tackling this national debt, because that's a way bigger problem in the future. But you also do have to acknowledge the fact that foreign policy does have an effect on American citizens. It's not necessarily true that it's going to affect you in the same way in a day-to-day sense that, Medicare cuts would. However, it's also fair to say that, in the future, it might have a bigger impact. It could absolutely have a bigger impact if, you cut foreign aid, AID, the intervention stuff, where it's just like, okay, we are spending this money to have influence around the world. All right. And that influence around the world is going to come back as, as an investment in other things. So we have, a stable supply of oil. We have a stable supply of shipping and transport around the world. We have, secure maritime trade. We have all of these types of things, which actually do have some degree of, benefit for the American people. Now, I'm happy to have the debate and argument on, are we spending it wisely? Are we spending it well? Should we be redistributing it to other things? Happy to have that conversation, and we almost certainly should, right? And Israel would be one of those places where you go, yeah, probably we're spending too much. We're not getting enough for our dollar. The juice is not worth the squeeze. I would agree with that. However, it's not a cut and dry issue. It's not a, foreign aid is, military spending, whatever, is completely superfluous. We don't need it at all. But these entitlement programs, Social Security, Medicare, these types of things, those are sacrosanct. We absolutely have to have them. It's like, no. It's all on the table or none of it's on the table. You can have the debate about where we should put our money, or you don't. If you do, then everything's on the table and everything needs to be looked at from this perspective of, are we getting our money's worth here?
So yeah, happy to see that go. Happy to see a lot of other defense categories reduced. One of our Libertarian Party candidates, Gary Johnson, had a plan to cut defense spending by 50%. I think that sounds great to me. A lot of foreign bases that could be closed that are not only not necessary, but invite attacks on our troops, because we have, you know, small numbers of troops stationed in, you know, various countries in Africa. And
very true. Although I will say, I don't think our base expenditure is like really a significant portion of the budget. It's fair to be like, look, you know, why are we there? There's no point. Absolutely. I don't think it saves us a ton of money. It does save us some, which is not nothing, but I don't think it's like, you know, gonna make or break us defense budget wise.
there's fighting there, and if we come under attack, then we have some obligation to respond, but we don't want to do that, but we have to if we're there and we get attacked. So it's just like inviting us to be more involved when we don't need to be. So I would close those. On the entitlement stuff, which is what kicked off the discussion, you know, Ben Shapiro has for a long time said this, and I agree with him, that, you know, people live, we pegged the retirement age for Social Security to a time period where people, life expectancy was much lower, people retired, they you know, they didn't live so much longer beyond that, and so it made more sense. You know, and I don't want to keep old people, you know, digging in the coal mines, but people live longer. And the way, you know, some employees can retire really early and in terms of their life expectancy.
Right. So it is a valid point to note things like the life expectancy, to note that the programs were designed when we just didn't expect people to live so long. You know, the actuarial argument is there. One of the things that I think, though, is difficult and frankly a bit distasteful to me is people who argue for raising the retirement age are almost all working in the kind of cushy jobs that you and I have, where we're sitting in chairs shooting our mouths out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say again, I think he kind of has the typical British attitude about this, which I don't know if we watched the video on this, but it is this thing of where are these programs getting their money from? You know, like the retirement funds, all of these types of things, they're taking the money out of your pocket to do this. You're not deciding how much, you know, of your earnings are going to go into a retirement fund. You know, other countries, your democratic socialist countries, your what is it? I want to say Sweden. I could be wrong about the exact country, but basically there are countries out there that do this type of thing, and they all have, you know, very significant, you know, retirement funds for these things, but they're all done through the specific industries. So the, you know, every industry gets to negotiate and gets to figure out, all right, well, like, when do we want to retire? How much money are we willing to sacrifice in each of our paychecks to do this? And we then get, you know, like a really good pension fund. And it's not that we're taking, you know, money from all the people around. They're all paying into it, and then they're all paying into it for, you know, a specific thing that, you know, applies to everybody. It's just like, you know, it doesn't make any sense. And again, it clearly doesn't work. It's not good. And the other argument that, who was this? This was V, I think, from like Romanian TV, made the argument that, look, this is the grift. Like it is the grift, that this is what's paying for all of these like horrible programs. This is how you're underwriting, you know, like the CIA, you're underwriting, you know, some authoritarian measures, is that you're collecting money for Social Security, but you're not spending it all on Social Security. You're going, yeah, you know, we're taking, you know, 50% of every one of your paychecks. And yeah, some of that goes to, you know, this program that, you know, you say you like and is ostensibly a good idea because, all right, we're making sure that, you know, your grandmother doesn't, you know, freeze to death in the winter or doesn't, you know, starve to death. But it's also going to, yeah, you know, we're going to spend some of that for whatever. We're going to spend some of that to, you know, build a road to nowhere. We're going to spend some of that on, you know, some spy operation in some country that you've never heard about. We're going to spend some of it on, you know, spying on Americans. We're going to spend some of this on, you know, if you're in Britain, you know, regulating your speech and, you know, arresting your uncle for making a spicy meme. All of that stuff is there in very real terms because of the fact that you have this big giant welfare state, and that politicians can say, we're collecting your taxes for these, you know, issues that most people can go, yeah, I like that. That makes sense. Of course, I don't want, I don't want to be, having to work into my 90s, breaking rocks on the side of the road. That would be horrible. I don't want that. So yeah, I'm willing to put down some money for like a retirement fund for me. Okay, that's great, except it's not for you, it's for everybody else. And actually right now, the money that you're putting into this, you're never going to see. It's not going to be there. It's not going to be there because, your grandmother or, somebody else's grandmother is sucking up all of that stuff and they're using it and they're living to, 100. When you get to be, 65, 70, you're not going to be able to touch any of that because it's going to be gone. It's not going to exist. And the other factor that's involved there is the national debt skyrocketing under all of these entitlement programs is going to also affect you. So not only are you not getting what you paid for in terms of your taxes for these entitlement programs, you're also incurring a massive debt that you probably are going to have to pay. The people who are benefiting from this stuff now are probably really not going to be hurt by, the debt crisis, hyperinflation or some, massive depression or something like that. They're not going to have to deal with that because they're going to be, they're going to be gone. But you will. So you don't have any of the investment that you made in your retirement fund. That's gone. Plus, you now have, massive economic hardships because of these policies that benefited those people. And it's probably not a good idea. Just off the top of my head, I'm just thinking. And, so again, the British welfare state viewpoint on these things, I don't like, and is kind of more distasteful to me, especially with all of the UK authoritarianism that's happening, that is being funded in large part because of the welfare state. They can campaign and say, this is for the NHS. That's why we're doing this. Okay, but the Ofcom stuff and, we're arresting you for memes. How are we paying for those police? Well, money that we said we were collecting for the NHS.
But awful but things. And if you're working in a steelworks or you're stacking shelves or you're working in a shipyard, which, is a declining form of employment in this country, but nevertheless, if you're doing heavy physical work, the idea that, you could just retire at 69 or 71 rather than 65, yeah, that's easier done in our game than it is in lots of others.
I mean, I hear you, and which is why I celebrate to some extent the decline of factory work in this country. I don't want people to lose jobs, but if we replace those jobs with white-collar jobs or more technical jobs, and we, ship that overseas, everybody hates outsourcing. People hate work being done anywhere else, but the progress of human civilization, right, is from backbreaking farm labor to less backbreaking factory work, right? People left farms in your home country. They
from
left
agrarian societies to different
to industrial work because it actually was, even though it seems very labor intensive to us, it was less labor intensive than farming. And then you move from that to modernity. So that's a good progress. The only other thing I'll say on changing the age, it's just like, to me, and I bring this up a lot, the scales, in my view, and you might have a different view, of kind of redistribution in America are, in my view, very over time weighted toward older people. Amount of, in terms of healthcare costs.
Niall might have a different take on this, but it's not even a question. It's clearly the case. And it would seem very obvious, right? Older people are people that are, more experienced, and therefore they're going to be more in charge. Like, there's way more old people in government, in, executive positions, in managerial positions, in positions of, power. They have, employees. They are much more so, the employers than they are the employees. And therefore, yeah, they have a greater say in this stuff. So of course, they're, if they're all looking out for their individual interests, they're going to say, yeah, we want all of these policies. And it just so happens that all of these policies advantage us at the cost of other people. So, of course, that's going to be the case. And I mean, it is the case. It is absolutely the case. The other aspect, which he probably will mention, is that older people right now in this generation specifically have it easier. Like they had it easier. They had a upbringing in an environment that was more conducive to accruing wealth because there was kind of like more to go around. And I will say 100 times, this is boomers made their money not because they were savvy or, not even really because of tax policy probably, but in large portion because everybody died in World War II, and therefore the supply of these finite resources like land or property, these things basically went up because there were fewer people competing for it. And therefore they were able to get more of it at a cheaper price. And then of course there's other like monetary policies and these like, going off the gold standard, going to a fiat currency, blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff true. But essentially they had all of these things leveraged, helping them out. So that's why they're so much richer than, people would be today, like in my generation or future generations. And therefore, doing this wealth redistribution, making it even better for them is crazy. And, it really hurts people that are trying to do stuff nowadays, that are younger, they're the people who are paying for all of these things. Okay. And they're not going to see any of it. They're not going to see any of the benefits of this.
The amount of money we are spending as a society, and maybe that takes systemic reform so that it's not spent that way, but on people in the last 10, 20, 30 years of their life in terms of their health care, the support they get in terms of Social Security, compared to young people who, to some extent, are having trouble buying houses or affording childcare, those kinds of things. It's so tipped that way, and to be confiscating more and more resources from younger people so that older people can live so comfortably does bother me.
I think I have a more magnanimous view. Maybe it's just I'm older than you, and it's not looming quite so far in the distance for me as it is for you.
Not going to be slinging takes on Rising and free media.
Not in 20
Shocking.
years' time, I don't think. But the point about it is, I do, of course I do think that obviously older people, as a rule, suffer greater health problems. And as a rule, their earning potential is much lower because most of them have finished their working life. Some of them have assets that they've built up over a lifetime, and that's fine. But you don't want people in the twilight of their lives to be in poverty because of healthcare costs or any other reason. So I think it's fine. Look, I mean, knock on wood, the amount...
Okay, we could also say, is it fair for those people to be a burden on, like, to be looked at as a burden on society? Like, I mean, the amount of venom and vitriol I hear people lob at boomers, like when you say boomers, it's like, it's such a horrible word. Like, it has so much vitriol behind it. When someone says these boomers, they hate them. They hate them. Why? Because there is like a real understanding that it's like, yeah, you kind of did put us in this position. It is really, in a lot of ways, your fault that things are so tough now for the current generation. And you're kind of sitting easy. So, I mean, is it fair for, these policies to be putting, that older generation, casting them as the villain in our mind? I don't know. So, I mean, and again, I mean, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. Like I said, I mentioned, pension programs in like Scandinavian countries. I think I said Sweden. I don't know if it was Sweden specifically, but, there are other ways to do a, program that makes it so that old people are not impoverished, but are also not, like a burden. They're not, sucking the wealth and labor out of younger generations to pay for their, ongoing lifestyle. And there's also something to be said for like, I don't know if you have an old grandmother, but I mean, mine says all the time, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I don't need to be around here anymore. I don't have anything else to do. I'm ready to, yeah. So, I mean, like, what benefit is it to be paying for her when she's like, I would, I can die. It's not a problem. I don't need to be, put through, the most incredible life-saving stuff, spend, $10 million to keep me alive in, like pain and suffering, aches and pains, can barely, control my bodily functions for another 6 months to a year. It's like, no, like, don't do that. But again, when you hear people talk about boomers, that's the sense that they get, is that they're holding on for that extra 3 months, that extra 6 months at exorbitant costs. And it does, like, it fosters this real sense of animosity towards them. And I don't know if that's fair.
I have paid in health premiums. Like, the health companies have definitely made a profit from me over the past 10 or 15 years because thankfully I haven't required any medical treatment. I hate health insurance companies, but I don't mind that basic equation that younger people pay more because we don't want, just as I say, people really in dire straits at the end of their lives.
Well, so that's not the thing. The model for all of this health insurance stuff, or all of this, Social Security stuff, all of that stuff is not young people pay more and they're healthier and therefore, they go, it's like, no. The model is, and always should be, they are investing in their future. They're putting this money away when they are healthy, when they don't have medical issues, so that in the future, when they do, and they are older and they're not able to work as much, or, realistically, a lot of people can work happily into their, 80s, 90s or whatever, and they do. If they've got, and look, here's the other side of this. If they've got jobs where they can do that, generally speaking, they're making more money because they have the greater experience. They've got, way more citations. If they're a professor, they've got a much greater wealth of expertise and knowledge to share, and therefore, their pay is commensurate with that. So, like, it's crazy to think, the young people should be paying more because we want the old people. It's like, no. Young people should be paying more now so that they don't have to pay as much later. They've got that nest egg saved up in the future. And realistically, if they live their life in such a way that they're healthy and, they live a good full lifetime, therefore the money they save can go on to their kids. They go, yeah, like, this was me spending wisely. I invested my money when I was young. I saved it for a rainy day in the future if there was an emergency. I lived my life in such a way that emergencies didn't happen, and now I've got a lot of money to pass on to my kids. That is the plan that it should be. It's not, we should take from the young to give to the old because we don't want the old people to be. It's like, no. That's ridiculous. That's insane.
Yeah, the healthcare system, we all agree, is just so messed up.
It is.
I think it would benefit either way. It could, like, maybe a more socialist system would be better, or like a more free market system would be better. I just went to the doctor, earlier today for like an annual checkup, and it's like, oh, do you want this test done? Do you want this thing done? I don't exercise any direction over that because I have no idea what it costs or what I'm paying for, or if I'm paying for it's going to some third party and I might find out later that it costs, like, I have no idea, and that leads to bad decision making. It's unlike any other service you pay for where you basically know what it costs and then whether it's in your interest to do it. Which seems dumb. It just seems dumb to me.
Just very briefly on that point, a cultural reference point or a cultural difference I've had to get accustomed to. In Ireland or Britain, when you go to the doctor, typically, unless you're like bleeding or falling over, it's like, oh, come back to us another couple of weeks unless, if it gets worse. Here, it's like, well, we better test you in case there's the 1 in 7 million chance that you're about to die of a horrible, ailment. And I've had to, like, readjust my mind to not think that that means I have the horrible ailment.
Right. And I mean, and that is something to consider, is that, again, I mean, look, Niall, his point, his, take on this is going to be viewed from a British perspective, which is really more of a left-wing mindset. It just is. Maybe that's a good thing, but I mean, that's one of the drawbacks to having a socialized system of, healthcare and medicine, is that you can easily, be made to wait. Canada's the same thing. Unless you're dying, come back later. Okay, so we have like you have a brain tumor. It's like, all right, we can get you in for an MRI in like 6 months. Pretty sure I've got like a cancerous brain too. I'm sorry, it's just the way it goes. We got 6 months backlog, so we'll get you when we can get to you. If it gets worse, maybe we'll reevaluate. But for right now, that's what we're scheduling you for. America's not that way. You can absolutely get an MRI the same day if you are willing to pay for it, and that is, I think, something that most people would probably be willing to go, yeah, I'll pay for that. Even if I have to pay on an installment plan, we'll do something like that. Okay. So I mean, again, it's like there's no solutions. There's only trade-offs. And which one are we willing to go for? What trade-offs are worthwhile if we're talking about, entitlement spending versus military spending versus, the consequences of, national debt skyrocketing uncontrollably? Where do we lie on that? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you for your time and attention. Farewell for now. All right, that was a good video. I like that. Now, the second video that we've got going up here has to do with this. I just saw this pop up. The Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 refunds announced and additional changes coming soon. Holy moly. All right, so I haven't been following this because it actually made me like sick to my stomach to learn of the changes that were announced in the Gamescom trailer or the Gamescom convention, whatever, and trailer. I'm really thinking this game. I mean, I made a video on it. I think this game is straight up dead on arrival. I really think it's not gonna go well. Maybe there's gonna be some changes in here. Maybe there's gonna be something in here that goes, no. The trailer story stuff, all of that stuff is like one aspect of this. It's like you're playing like a flashback. You diablerize an elder vampire, and then you basically like relive their life, something like that. That's totally reasonable. That's fine. I can deal with that. That's not a problem. I'm literally like okay with that. And if that's the way it is, and that is something that they could do, realistically, if you were like, okay, you're like a thin blood, therefore, if you're clanless when you're first embraced, you get to make your character, you get to do this kind of stuff, and then you pick, the clan of the person you're going to diablerize. The person you diablerize is the fire character, and then you get the powers of a specific clan, and you then get like a specific storyline based on, okay, fire was Ventru, fire was Malkavian, Toreador, Tremere, whatever. That's okay. But from what I can tell, that's not the case. From what I can tell, it's definitely not the case that you are able to actually play as a character that you make. My guess here is that and this is also lining up with like how you're unlocking abilities. You're not gaining experience. You're basically like you're going through and you're hitting just like milestones in the story, and that's giving you an extra ability. I'm like, that's so stupid. I don't like it. It's completely not RPG style. You're ruining my game. Please stop ruining it. Please stop. Some more news about Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Now, I have said very recently in the past that this game is dead on arrival because of the fact that they are basically changing the game from a RPG where you get to make your own character, you get experience for doing certain things, and you're able to build a character out however you'd like, and that character can be whoever you like. It is now changed into you're locked into one character. Her name is Fire, apparently. She has a voice in her head named Fabian, and it's now like an action-adventure game. And you're unlocking stuff by, I would imagine, milestones in the story that give you a new power that allow you to, sneak more effectively. And that's it. All right, so you've now completely gone away from the idea of a RPG in which you as the player have an enormous amount of agency over the character you're playing and how you're playing them, to an action-adventure game where you're playing a different class. Yeah, I don't want to play Diablo first person. I want to play Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, where I get to play as a vampire that I make, that I interact with, that I choose how they play, what they want to do, how they approach every situation. Unfortunately, maybe I'm wrong, but unfortunately, it seems like it's going towards the mass market appeal of, an action adventure game where you're getting locked into a much more linear storyline, and it doesn't look to be good. But let's watch this video from Slandered Gaming about apparently additional changes that might be coming soon. It could be that they're talking about the clans, and refunds announced does not sound good. It sounds like the new changes that they've announced are pissing a lot of people off. I know it did me. And if I had pre-ordered this game, I would be refunding it. I would absolutely be refunding it immediately.
Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. This is going to be a quick video, but I feel like a lot of you have this subject on your mind, and so I wanted to go ahead and put something out. Developer The Chinese Room announced today that they are going to refund pre-orders for the premium edition of Vampire the Masquerade.
Okay, so I'm guessing the premium edition refunds are because they're locking certain clans behind like DLC, paid day one DLC stuff. Now again, I question, why would they even have clans? If you're playing as one character, you're playing as what, Fire? Why does she have a choice of different clans? It made sense when, the original game story came out 5 years ago, I guess, where it said, hey, you will be, you're embraced. You're a normal human, you're embraced, and you're embraced in a mass embrace. You are then a thin blood. And for a little while, you have very few powers. There are all the sort of like universal blood buff powers or whatever that every vampire has. And then you get to decide what clan you would like to be inducted into, probably by a diablerizing an elder. And I'm thinking maybe they could have something like that. Like if Fire is a character that you diablerize and then like relive some of their memories, that's okay. I'm all right with that. That's a good way to get around it, and then it does give you some backstory, and it allows you to decide what clan they are, because it's not a character that you're playing. Because like in Vampire the Masquerade, you can't choose your clan. You're born into your clan. You're embraced into your clan. That's it. It's done story. Okay, that's it. That's over. And the clan is actually like a serious, significant part of the game. It defines your weaknesses. It also defines your disciplines to a degree. And in the actual tabletop, you can get other disciplines by drinking the blood of other clans, and then you're able to, learn and skill into their disciplines. But in the game, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, you didn't have any of those options. So I really question why they even have clans. If they're going down this route of your character's already extant, your character already has a backstory, they're an elder, they're, all of this kind of stuff. In the lore of the game, it does not make sense. Maybe they'll write something into it, but I'll be honest, I don't care if they write something into it. It's against the rules of the world.
Bloodlines 2. So to give you all a little bit of backstory in case you didn't know, a couple of weeks ago a trailer was released that announced pre-orders would be available, and part of the information they showed was that there are 2 additional clans for the game that were going to be locked behind the premium edition, which cost $30 more, and those 2 clans were going to be Toreador and La Sombra. A lot of people felt like this was very, very insulting, and
yeah, I mean it's an insane cash grab to be doing that, especially because it's already in the game, it's already there, it already exists, and realistically, it's literally just like a class change where it's like, okay, like it's insane, especially for $30. It's bananas.
that it was disrespectful to the fans. I'm absolutely one of the people on that list. Toreador is one of the original Vampire the Masquerade clans, by far, in my opinion, the most popular one as well. So
I don't know about that.
To put it behind a paywall just felt very greedy and egregious, and I said so in my video. Seems like there's been a lot of backlash over this decision, and so now the Chinese room, along with Paradox, is trying to figure out what is the best way to deal with the situation. So they put out an announcement today saying,
okay, again, I'm like, so I'm seeing in this this new trailer stuff that he's showing here, I'm seeing like some character creation stuff. Why is there character creation stuff? They said you're playing as this person. You're playing as Fire. This is your character. Why is there character creation? It's just aesthetic? I'm like, yeah, like I don't want just a pure aesthetic difference. I don't want her to be like, oh yeah, she wears glasses. This is my own character. It's like, no, no, no. It's not your own character. You don't get to choose who this character is.
hi, we're making adjustments and we'll share the details on September 17th. Big changes take time and we want to do this right. PS Store pre-orders will be refunded on September 8th. You'll be able to pre-order the game again before launch on October 21st. Thanks for your patience, and we'll share more soon. So it looks like they're definitely trying to figure out how to roll this back. And
I'm curious. I mean, I'm guessing all of this new footage is Gamescom footage, as opposed to looking at, like, you know, the stuff that they released again 5 years ago when the plan for the game was completely different. I'm assuming all of this stuff is new. This stuff makes me like think, all right, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm overreacting, and I hope I am. I hope this game's good. I want to play this game. But if it's going in the actual direction that it looks like it is, I'm probably not going to play it. I'm not going to hate play this game.
And we're not going to get specific information until September 17th. But whatever they're going to do, it must be substantial because they're already offering refunds. So I definitely think this is a step in the right direction. Hopefully they provide some sort of solution.
Okay, so like this is another thing. I'm just like looking at the gameplay here. The fact that you've got this like super fast-paced, you know, beat 'em up, fight 'em up, this kind of stuff, and then you've got like a feed action. It's like it's an FPS. It's like they're taking like Doom gameplay, where it's like, yeah, okay, you know, you're weakening your enemy, and then you're regaining your health by doing like a feed action, you know, like a glory kill or whatever they're called in Doom. I'm like, bro, it's supposed to be an RPG.
That comes off as much more fair to fans. I'm not necessarily expecting them to offer both clans for free. Many people have come onto my channel and reminded me how Paradox does things, that day one DLC is pretty much part of their business strategy.
And that is the thing that also concerns me about this game, is that Paradox is involved. Paradox is very much a, you know, profit-driven company as opposed to a art entertainment-driven company. And, you know, the profit comes after. We make a good, fun experience. People will buy it. They are looking at it from the opposite perspective of like, how can we appeal to the most people? And if that means that we have to water down our product, if we have to take out some things that, you know, are, you know, appealing to a core group of fans that will be rabidly interested in it, but it turns off like a normie who's like 20% likely to buy it, they'll do that because they'll go, there's more normies. There's more normies out there. So if, you know, if there's 6 normies out there for every 1 rabid fan, and there's only a 20% chance that, you know, the normie is going to pick this game up, you know, that's, you're getting like, you know, 1.2 people to buy this as opposed to 1 person to buy it. And that's just math, baby. That's more money in my pocket. That makes me think that we are going to get a, you know, modern audience, mass market slop game that's called Vampire the Masquerade's Bloodlines 2.
And and that there's probably little reason to believe they would do something different with this game. So maybe that's the case, but I for damn sure am hoping they get as close to free as possible, because I think this paid day one DLC is absolutely atrocious. And once again, to have Toreador as one of the clans locked behind this premium edition is especially just not right as far as I'm concerned. So hopefully they go in a very, very different direction and fans feel more comfortable supporting the game. I gotta admit, I was really, really impressed with that Ventrue trailer, and I'm looking forward to the other clan trailers that are supposed to be coming out down.
Here's the other side of this. They released clan trailers like 5 years ago. You know, they had that stuff opened up. Now, obviously, this is way closer to release, so they can't change this stuff. But I am just like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around, why are there clans? Maybe there was some lore drop that I missed, but I'm like, how does this square with the story? It just doesn't make sense to me. And I mean, I saw some text that says you are fire. So I'm like, okay, you are playing as this one character. You don't get to choose who they are. Maybe it's just like, it's like V in Cyberpunk, where it's like they just wanted to record, you know, a character talking to you, so they needed a name. Okay, maybe. I'm not as interested in that as I would be in a newly embraced neophyte vampire.
On the line, it's returned some of my excitement regarding the game. The Ventrue stuff looked really, really cool. My favorite clan has always been Tremere, and hopefully when their stuff is revealed on September 10th, it'll feel compelling enough that I might decide to go that route. Anyway, didn't want to make this video long. Wanted to make sure you all know when we can expect more information regarding the day one DLC, and that some of you are already going to start getting refunds. I don't understand why the PlayStation Store is getting refunds, but they don't mention any other avenues with which you could have used to purchase the premium edition. But I assume part of what they're planning to do is provide refunds to people who purchase the premium edition in a different way. Of course, we won't know for sure until September 17th. Anyway, that's the video. Hope you all enjoy.
Yeah, so I mean, I will say Tremere's nice. Ventrue's better. Ventrue's clearly the best, obviously. That's why they went first. These people know what they're talking about. Ventrue's the top clan. I do like Tremere. Tremere's like my second favorite clan. But yeah, Toreador for me was always just like, it's the most meh. It's the least like interesting. In terms of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, it was always the least interesting. Yeah, it's the least interesting clan to me. Like Malkavian's cooler, Nosferatu's more interesting. You know, Ventrue and Tremere are both like the two that are both kind of like most grounded, like understandable. But they each play very differently, and they have, you know, different cool stuff going on with them. Yeah, Toreador always felt like the most, you know, basic kind of choice. So I'm like, you know, I don't care that Toreador is locked behind this DLC. Obviously, the notion of the DLC being clans locked behind it is insane. That's ridiculous. That's such an insane money grab. You know, you're not adding any extra content, but you're saying, yeah, for the full game, I'd like to pay, you know, 150% of the base game to play the game as it was, you know, intended. That's ridiculous. That's completely insane. It requires no extra work to do, so it's disgusting. And the fact that they even like shopped that around as an idea does make me think that this game does not look good. And I do still legitimately at this point, I am not excited for this game. I'm not. Maybe more stuff down the line will change my mind. Obviously, there's also the fact that, you know, there's a mod community. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines has a huge mod community and has for the entirety of its lifespan. So maybe they'll fix everything. Maybe they can fix everything and we'll be okay. But until that happens, I mean, this is looking like a Cyberpunk 2077 deal to me. So I'm guessing the game's gonna, you know, if it's ever good, it's gonna suck at launch. So I'm not pre-ordering it. I'm not. It's not gonna happen. But I don't know. What do you think about this game? Do you care about it at all? The DLC is crazy, right, though? Right? You agree with that? Yeah. Good luck in all your endeavors. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll say farewell for now. Ugh. Not good, though. I really don't think this is a good game. I think this game's going to suck. All right. Let's see. We got one other. I'm trying to think what other. Yeah, I want to go for this video. This looks funny.
Commit war crimes. Ants commit war crimes. And it's really cool. On this channel, much like little boys with plastic army men, we spend a lot of time appreciating the aesthetics of warfare, while also completely ignoring the human tragedy component. But thankfully, today, we're talking about ants!
Ants!
Yay!
I like ants.
I like ants!
Like humans, ants wage war over territory, resources, and power. But unlike humans, ants have zero morality, no conscience, probably, and have evolved into nature's most efficient, unfeeling soldiers.
They do not follow the Geneva Conventions. They violate them constantly, and it's really fascinating and funny.
So today, we're talking you through 8 of our favorite war crimes ants routinely commit in their endless global conflict.
Number
Sweet.
1, attacking the wounded. In the ant world, rival ant colonies often invade and slaughter injured ants or drag them out of recovery areas instead of leaving them to heal. Do you know what it is? Do you know what makes ants so fucking cool? They are behaving with an intelligence that completely belies their stature. There's no reason for their tiny fucking micro brains to be acting in such complex and mysterious ways.
It's a microcosm of horrible things humans do, but they're fucking ants, you know?
Yeah.
So you can, like, be God and watch them.
Do ants have a hive mind? How does it work? How does it work? Does the queen squirt
They're not
pheromones and they will
Tyranids.
just fucking do her bidding like a bunch of simps?
There's, like, recent...
Del Queen, Bell Del Queen. The African.
Nice.
I was waiting to hear about Belle Del Queen.
I don't know. That's as far as I got.
What she was up to.
She's fucking making the Sims do her bidding, Don. Oh, that's all I got. The African Matabel ants are known for their unusual behavior of carrying injured comrades back to the nest to treat their wounds, like tiny paramedics. By licking the ants' wounds, they clear off debris and clean it with an antiseptic. These better ants have been known to get into wars with our first war criminal, the driver ants.
Nice.
In the ant world, driver ants are OP. In addition to being nomadic and just living off of storming and killing other ant colonies, they're capable of slicing flesh with their giant mandibles. A colony of them has even been witnessed eating a snared antelope alive.
Savages. Not like the nice Mantabel ant. It's just an ant.
That's just a fucking ant.
It's just a good citizen.
So these guys are the heroes of our.
Ant.
That's just a fucking ant.
It's just a good citizen.
It is clear in the lease no pets are allowed in the apartment. Sorry. Okay, we'll make an exception because he looks very polite.
So these guys are the heroes of our story.
Yeah, and then there's these fucking monster ants.
But look, that's sick, dude. I'm fucking betting on them.
Dude, it captures the imagination. It's like the little regular ants become like regular humans to you, and these are like fucking monsters invading, you know?
Yeah.
So do the driver ants, like, they fight the African
They
ants?
snip them in half. They probably don't have a chance.
Dude, ants are cool.
Cool.
Ants are freaking awesome.
cool,
With their
man.
big heads and strong jaws, these ants will indiscriminately attack the Metabellepella ants, killing the medics and the wounded ants as they return to the colony. This makes the driver ants the most egregious offenders of Article 12. Don't go for the healers. So these guys specialize in fucking basically spawn camping. It's like hornets, right? Hornets are big, scary fucks, and then they go to beehives and they kill all of them. But then the Japanese bees, because they're clever, swarm the hornets and like turn them into a ball of bee bees and heat them to death.
Yeah, they cook them alive.
That's so sick.
Like,
with their bodies.
Cooperative self-defense. Okay,
That's sick, dude.
our boys can fight back. African ants actively help nestmates under attack from driver ants, scanning for and removing any driver ants clinging to their legs or antennae. What? Is there a size discrepancy?
Are the driver ants tiny? Surely not.
This hole just never ceases to go deeper and deeper.
It's
so
a big
cool.
fucking asshole. It's like a werewolf
Holy
ant.
shit. That's huge,
Somehow
dude.
you made ants even cooler. It is a werewolf.
For real.
Ant. Dude, I had no idea ants could look that cool. War Crime 2, use of chemical weapons.
Wow, I mean, what other
Ants
kind of
famously
weapons?
defend their colonies by spraying clouds of formic acid from their abdomens, dousing foes in a poisonous mist. Sick.
Look at that. They
Yeah,
look like cum
it's pretty
shots.
cool.
Oh, I got you, huh?
Hey.
Alright, so the acid is kind of sick, but it's not as sick as you would hope. It's not like blood from aliens.
Well, is tear gas that big of a deal? Mustard gas that big of a deal?
Chlorine gases.
Is that just
Mustard gas
I
is
forget.
also
don't
kind of a
know.
big deal.
We don't know a lot of things.
Speaking of war crimes,
Another
Yeah.
ant known for its chemical...
where's your energy, Don?
I'm trying to find it. Another ant known for its chemical weaponry is the Malaysian exploding ant.
Exploding!
Whoa.
When combat takes a turn for the worse, the worker exploding ant will grab onto an attacker and contract its muscles until its abdomen explodes, spraying
Damn.
yellow glue-like goo in all directions, entangling and immobilizing all nearby enemies. Fucking sick. Crazy.
What?
It's like you were saying, like, ants have so little sentience, theoretically.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But
Theoretically.
it's still alive. It has its own little ant experience.
Sort of.
And it's fighting, and just that it has like the evolutionary prerogative, like I'm gonna fucking
Fucking explode on this
fucking
guy.
explode.
I'm gonna explode on him. Do they cause the other guys to
I
explode?
don't know,
or do they
man.
explode themselves and
I mean, yeah, this is a point where I'm like, the Alex O'Connor version of this would be like, all right, man, well, like, they're probably conscious to some degree. And I'm like, I don't care, man. I mean, yeah, I'm like, no, they're robots. Like, they're just straight up machines. Like, there's no even remote argument that would convince me that, you know, they actually do have any degree of like conscious will at all. They're just straight up operating on a series of like biological switches. That's
like
it.
acid attack?
Yeah, they acid attack.
So do they die during this?
Yeah, I think so. For sure. He like blows up his little ant butt
Right.
just by straining too hard. He blows out his ass.
Can you buy ants from anywhere? Is there like an ant store we can go to?
Just buy
Yeah.
some exploding ants.
Don't you want to play Pokemon with these things?
From Malaysia?
Don't you want to fight them? Why is there not like a fucking national ant fighting league?
I think I'd feel too bad for them.
We really need a good plague or World War III or something. I feel too bad for the ant.
But they're cool. I named them.
I named every single ant.
The entire species is called the Malaysian exploding ant. We're discounting the rest of their culture for their self-destruction tendencies.
Yeah, that's low-key not okay.
What's the blast radius of when he blows himself up?
Well, it's getting all in that guy's mouth. Is that an African ant?
Oh, is it the good guy?
Oh, uh-oh. War is shades of grey, huh?
The last
horrors
ant
of
we'll
war.
discuss that uses chemical weapons are fire ants, who have stingers to inject a potent venom. Described as 2 to 3 times as toxic as DDT, which is a pesticide banned in 1972.
Which
easily
shouldn't have
kills
been.
Other
DDT was awesome. We should have kept going with DDT. It actually didn't even, the whole reason we banned DDT was because it was killing the eagles. It was messing up their eggs. It actually didn't do that. That is actually, I'm gonna double check here. Let's go for Copilot. Let me check here for some Copilot stuff. Does DDT actually affect eagle eggs? Give me sources, only facts. Verify you're a human. I am indeed human. And does DDT... I would actually be able to type better. Actually affect eagles' eggs. Provide sources only facts. Does affect. A practitioners the food chain. Field studies and lab experience confirm that DDT exposure was sufficient to cause HL thinins in bald eagles and other birds of prey. 35% here. 500? Banned in 1972? Okay. This is all bullshit, actually. Oh, the EPA study? Gotcha. I mean, they are going to do this anyway. But no, I'm pretty sure it actually like didn't do this.
This would make fire ants virtually unstoppable if it wasn't for their natural enemy, the tawny crazy ant.
That can't be its real name.
Tawny crazy ants can secrete their own formic acid and smear it over themselves as an antidote to
I'm gonna actually. I need to research this. Now we've gone into the rabbit hole. I have to look at this. I'm trying to think. Was it John Stossel who did a video on this? Might have been John Stossel. It might have been Reason.
What these are doing to your kids?
Nope. DDT. We doomed. I don't think it was this then. Let's check Reason. Maybe it was Reason TV. Let's check you. Check you.
It's
Demonizing DDT. There we go.
Visiting a clinic where there are children two to a bed and lying on the floor suffering from malaria makes a pretty strong impression.
This is 15 years old. This is old as hell.
Hi, I'm Nick Gillespie for Reason TV, and
this is the fun about
we
DDT.
are talking with Donald Roberts and Richard Tren, authors of the new book, The Excellent Powder. DDT.
I love that I literally went from Tom and Don of Flash Gets. They mentioned DDT once, and I'm like, no. Need to get into this.
Thanks for
Remember, DDT is not that bad.
What is excellent about DDT?
Well, DDT is a chemical that has saved hundreds of millions of lives and has protected billions of people from the threat of insect-borne diseases. And what could be more excellent than that? And it's done so without harming human health.
Okay, now this is clearly not the received wisdom or the popular, well, I guess it's not the received scientific wisdom, unfortunately, and it's not the popular.
And I literally just went on, used the AI, and that was the first thing that it said was like, oh yeah, hey, here's the US EPA, this kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, dude, that stuff was like 50 years old.
DDT. We know DDT destroys eagle eggs and makes people sprout extra arms and things. So what's behind the disjuncture?
The disjuncture basically is a product of fear campaigns that were started back in the 60s, and they have been continued to present time. Fear campaigns that link to potential or theoretical harm to wildlife as well as theoretical harm to human health. Those harms simply don't exist. If
there you go.
Look carefully at the scientific.
I was gonna say, like, I'm glad I was able to find this quickly, and we can watch it.
But the perception exists.
So much so that the totally rational AI, the first thing, obviously the first thing it does is it scans the internet. And it goes, okay, what's the, the things that are popping up most? It's this stuff. And obviously, if the popular perception of this stuff is that it's, super bad and it does this type of stuff, what are the results you're going to get? You're going to get this kind of results, which is like, not actually lining up with reality.
In the minds of the public.
And one of the flashpoints for that was Rachel Carson in the 60s with Silent Spring, right? That's where the kind of modern environmental movement grows out of that. And she fingered DDT and other kinds of insecticides and chemicals at use. Is there any science? I mean, you're saying that DDT does not harm the environment or does not harm human beings?
Saying that DDT does not inflict severe harm on wildlife or the environment, and it does not inflict severe harm on human health.
So I want to see if he's going to say that, the eagle eggs thing is not true. Because that's the thing that I remember. That's the thing that's in the public consciousness of, like, the reason why DDT is bad is, it's destroying our national symbol, our national bird. is getting, extincted because of this horrible chemical that, okay, yeah, like it is stopping malaria and, saving millions of people's lives, but I mean, like, we're, eagles.
But when you look at the way DDT is used in malaria control.
Who are these two people being interviewed? They're two, let me see if they say specifically. Robert Tren, Richard Tren, and let's see, Donald Roberts. I guess these are two. Let me double check here. Part of Africa fighting malaria. I don't know. They wrote a book specifically about this stuff.
Not in the environment, not broadly distributed in the environment, then it becomes literally unavailable for doing the kinds of harm that many of the campaigners against the use of insecticides in public health claim.
What is the legal status of DDT throughout the world? And it's most needed in the developing world, right?
Right. DDT has been banned in most places for use in agriculture. It still remains available for use in public health. And under the Stockholm Convention, which is a UN convention to ban persistent organic pollutants, there is an exemption for use in public health. So it still can be used. However, there is a deadline that has been set by 2017 where the UN Stockholm Convention wants to halt in all production of DDT and an elimination completely by 2020. So no more production after 2017.
So it looks like that.
So it still can be used.
Would have happened.
What's interesting and what's been happening over the past few years is that even though the US government is now funding use of DDT through a very good malaria control program, the growing regulations on how you can use these insecticides has made it more difficult to use, less available, and more expensive to store, transport, and use. And so regulations is kind of pricing it out of the market. And there are fewer producers now. One of the big producers was China, and they, in compliance with the UN convention, the Stockholm Convention, have ceased production. So,
how many lives could a more robust use of DDT save?
It could have huge impact on the amount of disease that we have in the developing countries today. Huge impact. And the reason we know that for absolute certainty is that we already have a history of how effective it can be.
That is true. We do have really good data on its impact on like malaria. It was essentially like straight up like eliminated for a number of years after they started using DDT, which is crazy. Which is crazy to think that was how effective it was. Because generally speaking, like chemical insecticides, they wane. Like they become not effective very quickly because insects are really good at adapting to environmental poisons. So the fact that, this thing had the impact that it did is insane.
By 1969, when the global eradication program was abruptly brought to an end, it had literally freed roughly 1 billion people from endemic disease. That was DDT and DDT alone. And so we have that history. We know it can be very, very effective.
Yeah,
so we're talking about billions of people.
Yes.
And there are no easily available alternatives, or?
There are alternative insecticides that can be used. There are none that work in the way in which DDT works. And we devote a substantial portion of the book to describing the modes of action of DDT. That the conventional wisdom is that insecticides kill mosquitoes, and the only good mosquito is a dead mosquito. In fact, that's false. And there's decades of evidence that shows that DDT stops mosquitoes from coming into houses. It works as a spatial repellent. There are no other replacement insecticides that work in that way. There's growing resistance to these other insecticides. And we're seeing growing pressure from some scientists and from activist groups against the use of those chemicals. And what we fear, and one of the reasons for writing this book, is that if these groups do to DDT what they, due to these other chemicals, what they have done to DDT, we face serious problems with disease control, and not just in the developing world, but in the developed world as well.
Talk very briefly about why are you interested in this topic, or how did you come to this topic?
Well, my interest dates back to the 1970s. I was conducting research along with a team of other researchers in the Amazon basin. We were looking for studying disease epidemiology. And so I became very curious as to how this chemical, when sprayed on house walls, could have such a tremendous impact. And so eventually I had the opportunity to carry...
That's interesting. I actually didn't know that about DDT, that it is like it's like a area denial thing, as opposed to it was actually killing mosquitoes. I didn't know that. I straight up had no clue that was the case. I thought that it was a legitimate insecticide in the sense of, you know, it killed them, as opposed to just like repelled them from areas. So therefore you can be super targeted, doesn't affect the rest of the environment. And then, yeah, that's cool. I do want to see if he mentions the specifics about the eagle eggs thing.
Carry out some studies in a very remote area of the Amazon.
And to be honest, here's the other side is, I don't know if I care. You know, like, I mean, I care if eagles, you know, if DDT actually was so incredibly poisonous to, you know, eagles, eagle eggs, whatever the species, whatever. If the trade-off is eagles no longer exist in the wild, because obviously you'd still have them in preserves and stuff that you could easily just, like, you know, grab up an amount of eagles such that they would be, you know, they would live in captivity. But the trade-off is that, you know, hundreds of millions of people a year are not dying in, you know, pain and suffering from malaria and other insect-borne diseases. Yeah, that's a completely fair trade-off. I have no problem with that. Yeah, I'm happy to say that a human life is worth more than an eagle's. I have no problem saying that.
Basin, and so I built these experimental huts, and we studied very carefully the movement of mosquitoes into and out of these huts. And then after a couple of years of study, we sprayed one of them. And quite frankly, the result of that experiment changed my whole professional life, because what I observed was that as soon as the house was sprayed, that was the end of the mosquitoes coming into that house. Now, in an unsprayed house that was nearby, the mosquitoes continued coming in and biting throughout the night. But in the sprayed house, that was it. And that protection, that prevention of mosquitoes coming into the house at nighttime and biting, which is the time they transmit disease, that protection was continuing 12 months later from one spray.
Richard, what's the origin of your interest?
Well, unlike Don, I'm not an entomologist or specialist in tropical disease. I'm an economist, and I was interested in the environment and development.
They are talking about who they are.
South Africa at the time when the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants was being negotiated, there was a massive malaria epidemic, and it was precisely because DDT was taken out of use in South Africa, and there was resistance to the alternative insecticides. And I got interested in...
All right, this Richard Trend guy sounds incredibly shady. His organization spent 100% of its budget on executive salaries, according to the IRS. Ooh, damn. Yeah, I wasn't able to find a specific Africa fighting malaria. Gotcha. Is he still alive? Because, I mean, this was like 15 years ago. Let me see if I can... I mean, actually... I was going to say I was going to switch the screen for just a second. But yes, yeah, so I'm trying to think... Let me see this guy. Africa fighting malaria. Let me do this. And... Okay, so let me see. All right. 2015, 88% gains made in fighting against malaria. This is I'm seeing like UN stuff. Fact sheets about malaria. According to the IRS. Interesting. All right, where am I getting here? Tren and Roberts. Richard Tren, here we go. He's listed as a board member. Okay. Yeah, like the first thing that comes up, let me see if I can show you. All right, so the first thing that comes up for me is this guy. Richard Tren. This is like the AI. I don't have a picture of him, so I don't know if that's the guy I'm thinking of. Also seeing this South Africa stuff. I'm just seeing a lot of different Richard Trends. But yes, I mean, this specific thing, the Africa fighting malaria guy. Yeah, this guy right here. Uh-huh. Let me see. Leadership. Okay, so that's not it. That's the WHO. Yeah, I'm not... Do they just have like an AFM? Let's just see if they have a website on their own. So this was an NGO. Okay. NGO based in Washington, D.C. Looks like it... I mean, it says was, so I'm assuming this was disbanded. AFM has not published an annual report or any research since 2011. And then republishes articles by AFM on a variety of topics. Gotcha. So let's check their website. Okay. Board and staff. So, I mean, I don't know. All right. And then we're seeing this guy, Richard Tren. Masters of Science, I'm guessing. Since its reception, he's published widely. Malaria control. Interesting. And then the other guy, who's this other guy? Donald Roberts. I don't think he's on there. No, he is. Okay. Tropical public health, the uniform service. These things, Bethesda, Maryland. Longest career. Oh no, this other guy. Okay, they were. I thought this dude was the other guy. Okay, so this is the guy of public health stuff. That was Donald Roberts, and the Richard Tren guy. I'm guessing that means this is Richard Tren. Chairman of the AFM board. So yeah, because he's the South African guy. That makes sense. Okay. Published widely in the political economy of malaria control as well as on other topics of healthcare and development. And then Donald Roberts is a professor emeritus of tropical public health at the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences in Bethesda, Maryland. His long and distinguished career includes the publication of over 100 of peer-reviewed research papers on malaria and other insect-borne diseases, and he has conducted innovative research on the action of chemicals for use in malaria control. He has been a board member of AFM since 2003. Interesting. And then this, let's see if this, all right. According to IRS filings, the organization spent money entirely on executive compensation with no program expenses of any kind. It has been described as a front group established to discredit environmentalists. In documents obtained during state litigation against tobacco companies, founder Roger Bate described the organization's purpose as a part of a larger strategy to portray first world environmentalists as unconcerned with Black Africans. Yeah. James Lawrence Powell lists Africa Fighting Malaria as a green scamming organization that is engaged in climate change denial, a statement that is shared by Hayden Washington and John Cook, who also note that it was funded by ExxonMobil. According to Powell, the website of Africa Fighting Malaria features articles and commentaries opposing ambitious climate mitigation concepts, even though the dangers of malaria could be exacerbated by global warming. So articles, let's see. Does it say specific articles in here? The Inquisition of Climate Science, let's see. Call the geology, these things. Does this say anything specifically about this? Let me see these. All right, so even though the dangers of malaria could be exacerbated by global warming, I wonder if that's what this statement is talking about. I'm assuming, let's see. Search for book sources. Yeah, let's see. Let's check. The Inquisition of Climate Science. I just want to see the summary of this. Okay, modern science is under the greatest and most successful attack in recent history, an industry of denial, abetted by news media and infotainment broadcasters more interested in selling controversy than preventing facts, has duped half the American public into rejecting the facts of climate science, an overwhelming body of rigorously vetted scientific evidence showing that human-caused carbon. So this is all about climate science. It has nothing to do with the malaria stuff. Yeah, has nothing at all to do with the malaria stuff. And they don't link anything specifically about articles and commentaries opposing. So the opposing ambitious climate mitigation concepts. Okay, so let's say that one of those ambitious climate mitigation concepts would be like net zero. Okay, net zero in terms of its impact on people in developing countries is like crazy. It's basically like saying, all right, if you're in Africa and you're in poverty now, we want you to be in poverty forever, because the only way to get out of poverty for a large portion of the developing world is to industrialize, and the cheapest way to do that, which is the only way that they can afford, is to utilize dirtier energy stuff. So things along the lines of coal and oil and these types of things. Let's see. Increase in tropical diseases is a very common danger that's pointed to by climate science. I'm sure it's covered in that book. I'm sure it is. My guess, and again, I'm like, that's it. It's understandable if they're basically saying, hey, the incidence rate of malaria would go up if there's more of the world that's warmer, and therefore is a better environment for certain insects. And certainly you saw similar things to this happening in like Katrina, where there's a lot of like standing water after hurricanes or these types of things. They become a large breeding ground for mosquitoes and these types of things. Now the thing is that we can't stop hurricanes. I'm also very skeptical about any of these climate mitigation things having any effect, because realistically the majority producer of greenhouse gases would be like India and China. Any kind of first world intervention and that kind of stuff would have to tackle those countries first and foremost. They're producing the vast majority of greenhouse gases, and so if they don't stop burning coal and oil and all kinds of that kind of stuff, the entire first world, all of the Western world can basically stop all production of these things, and it would like basically slow the climate change stuff by like a very small amount, and then also have like massive, radical, horrible consequences for everyone in those nations, because they would all of a sudden be thrown back into 300 years ago and all of the issues that come alongside with that. So yeah, so the dangers of malaria could be exacerbated. Yeah, that's true, but I mean, the thing we're looking at here is DDT, where we're going, okay, well, this basically makes malaria from mosquito bites gone. It eradicates it. So I think, and to be perfectly honest, I'm very skeptical of a lot of these kind of environmental issues, because the people who are doing these you know, who are writing these books and these types of things, they have a large following, and they have a lot to gain from basically saying, no, these environmental issues are very serious. It's, you know, that's their paycheck. All right, so let's check this environmental thing. No program expenses of any kind. Let me check this thing. This is ProPublica. Okay, let me check this thing out. This organization is not listed in the IRS's most recent list of tax-exempt organizations. We have data associated with this employer identification number. Okay. So their total assets in 2015 was, let's see, $6,000. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like basically, let's think. So this is 15 years ago. This is April 2010. So seemingly, like, right after they published this book, bam, like, all of their assets dry up. And so they don't have any money to do anything. Yeah, it looks like they basically, like, directly after this, and then it's essentially defunct after 2015. Let's see here. Fiscal date. Let's see if we can look at any of this other stuff here. 2014. Sources of revenue, assets, debts. So this is just talking about revenue. Okay, contributions, yeah. Contributions, they get most of this stuff. I read somewhere they ran a massive surplus and spent nearly nothing. Then their funding evaporated overnight and the organization imploded. I mean, that's definitely what it looks like. That's definitely what it looks like from, you know, this chart, is that they had, I mean, it doesn't go back any further than this. I think they said it was incepted in 2000. So they had around 10 years, spent nothing on programs, that is. Yeah. I got what you meant. But I'm trying to see where their spending stuff is. Nonprofit Explorer. Trying to see. Okay, here it is. Notable expenses, executive compensation. They spent 50% of it in 2011. And then 2012, they also spent half of it. And then that was it, basically. So let's see. Assets, other salaries and wages. So they got basically 2 years where they had contributions. They got roughly, let's say, $300,000. As far as this is concerned, this looks like it's not a tax-exempt organization. I'm guessing it's a nonprofit. So maybe they don't have to spend a lot of money in taxes. I'm not sure. Professional fundraising fees. So I don't know where this percentage of total expenses. So they spend half of this. I mean, again, like I'm just reading off their stuff here. Let me see what it says on. Let me go back here for just 1 second. Open that in another tab. And I want to see what this thing says. The organization spent money entirely on executive compensation with no program expenses of any kind. I don't see. I understand what this person, you know, who wrote this article was saying, that they don't see program expenses anywhere else, but their percentage of total expenses in terms of executive compensation is only 50%. So I don't know what else they spent it on. I don't know what else they spent it on. But I mean, if that's what they, you know, it says expenses here. So I'm assuming they spent the other half of it. They don't say what. And then realistically, executive compensation, it's like $100,000, $150,000 over, let's say 1, 2, 3, $50,000. That's not nothing. That's definitely not nothing. But that's not like a huge payday, you know? But it does look like, yeah, essentially like more or less right after they released this book, they, you know, their contributions totally dried up. Like just completely dried up. So if they were running a scam, it was a very poorly run scam. They, you know, yeah. So my guess is, you know, the stuff comes out, they get, you know, completely, I don't know. I don't know if it's unfair to say they were smeared. I have no idea. Maybe it was completely fair and this was a complete scam organization. But my guess is, you know, immediately right after they say this, where they're like, hey, they're questioning whether or not, you know, the environmental activism in terms of DDT is good or, you know, like worth, you know, worth it as compared to malaria stuff. You know, they're just immediately slammed for saying that, you know, this activism, this program specifically, is bad. And I mean, very clearly, $220,000, that's it? That's all you raised for an entire year? I mean, compared to like any environmental organizations, that's nothing. That's absolutely nothing. The environmental organizations are very, very well funded. They make a lot more money. And I will also say executive compensation for a lot of those nonprofits. Like, let me see. Let me see. Can I see what PETA is? What if they have that up here? Pet Partners. Are they not? Is PETA not a nonprofit? Let's try people, ethical treatment of animals. Okay, there it is. They got $77 million. I want to see how much money did they get in executive compensation. They actually spent more in executive compensation. They spent $180,000. And then they spent $17 million on other salaries and wages. So all the people that were employed by them, they spent $17 million on that. Let me see what they did else here. Yeah. So 160,000. Okay. You know, and they're getting $66 million a year in contributions. Let me think of another. I'm trying to think of another. Let's think. What's another good environmental agency that's like specifically about environmental what is it? Is it Greenpeace? Let's see. I think that's what it is. Is it Greenpeace? Let me think Greenpeace here. Is it Greenpeace? I'm gonna guess it's this. Might be this one. No, that's the second different one. Okay. Not tax deductible. Their executive compensation is $1.5 million. 3.9%. If you go back to the Wikipedia page, the first source shows you there 2008, 2009. Let's see it. Financial statements. There it is. Yeah. Let's see it. Okay, this is archived. Audited. Auditor's report, 2009. And this is certified public accountants to the board of directors. We have audited the accompanying statements of financial position of Africa Fighting Malaria International Inc. organization and the related statements of activities, functions, cash flows for the years that ended. These financial statements are the responsibility. Conducted our audits in organization in accordance with the auditing standards generally accepted in the US of A. We plan to perform the audits to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial freedoms of freedom statements. Audit includes examining on test basis, reasonable basis for opinion. The financial statements are accurate. Okay. So let's see. So current assets, roughly $160,000. They're spending $20,000 on the website, $10,000 on office, depreciation. Security deposits, liabilities, unrestricted net assets, total liabilities. Yeah, it's about 160,000. Program. Okay, here we go. Program expenses is $238,000. Fundraising expenses, general and administrative expenses, $30,000. Okay. Where am I seeing executive compensation? Let's try to find that. Payroll liabilities, accounts, prepaid expenses, depreciation, changes in assets. Depreciation dues, office expense, printing, telephone, insurance, travel, grant expense, contracting, general and administrative. I'm not seeing anything here. Wages. I'm guessing that's what they're talking about. I'm guessing that's what they're talking about in terms of general administrative fundraising. I'm guessing this is what they were talking about in terms of expenditures. This is the closest that I'm getting. It's 120,000 total, 172,000 for wages. That to me doesn't say executive stuff. Let me see if let me just see. Nope. I don't see. All right, let's see if we can. Okay, so Control F works. I don't see anything in here that says executive. Yeah, nothing in here specifically mentions executive compensation. Yeah. In this specific, yeah. So, I mean, this Greenpeace thing, or this, what is this? ProPublica Nonprofit Explorer thing, it doesn't mention. I mean, obviously this is for Greenpeace. This is not for the other thing. Do I have that up here? Yeah, I do. Okay. So, although I will, let's think. So this is for 2005. Compensation to these guys is the key. These things. This is obviously nothing, but again, I mean that's after they kind of imploded here. Total assets. Yeah, so I mean, like this is just mentioning this. Looks like 100,000, 140,000. That's it. We do have the PDFs for these other things. All right, contributions. Yes, we have the PDFs here of the stuff that they actually submitted. Okay, other expenses, professional fundraising, benefits paid to members, salaries. Okay, so here it is actually. Salaries, other compensation, employee benefits, that's the $125,000. Okay. So salaries, that's not just for executives. That would be for everybody employed by this organization. Let's see if they say anywhere that it's just for specific people. Let's check. Kind of looks like organization, $5,000 of grants. Yeah, so this to me looks like it's not all executive compensation. To me, this looks like it's just pure, it's like a salary. It's like their full salary. Then it makes sense. If that were the case, it actually totally makes sense to be saying, okay, they spent 50% of their money on 50% of their expenditures are basically for, salaries. Some of that's for the people on the board, and some of that is for, the people that are running their website, the people that are running all this other stuff. I get it. That makes sense. But to me, it's looking... Okay, here we go. So this guy, Richard Tren, he receives $74,000. Average hours per week. Describe, he's got 40 hours a week, 74,000. I mean, you know, that's not bad. $74,000 for a 40-hour work week, 52 weeks a year. And then obviously that's going to be before taxes. $74,000 is that's not nothing, but it's also not like, that's not a crazy amount of money. And then the other amount is for Kimberly Hess from, or who's a research assistant. She gets the other amount. Let's see, this Dr. Robert Bates, Donald Roberts, they both get nothing. So this guy is the executive director. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So so this is his job. Richard Tren, that makes sense actually. Yeah, so he's actually like the person who's running this. If he's running it, you know, he's doing 40 hours a week. So these are really the only two employees of this, you know, group. They're doing, you know, $56,000 for a research assistant. That's pretty good. Executive director, $74,000. Like that's not a crazy amount of money. So to me, I mean, this seems like a normal ass nonprofit to me, to be perfectly honest. Okay, let me go to another one. If the claim is correct, they did not conduct any programs. One wonders what he spent his 40 hours on. Well, it looks like he was writing this book. They promoted that stuff. If the claim is correct, they did not conduct any program. I mean, I don't know where. Is this what you're, with no program expenses of any kind? I guess that's what you're referencing. So this is basically just, I mean, they don't have anything up there specifically. If we're looking at, which one was it? Is this one? So yeah, so the wages was for, I'm guessing, the two people that we were just looking at. Where were we going to look at it? Do we look at it here? I think we can look at it here. Let's check. We're looking for, yeah. Okay, so for these two people, those are the wages that are paid out. And then, all right, so that's the wages, roughly. That makes sense. Okay. Grant expense, payroll, insurance, depreciation, telephone, consulting fees, dues, subscription, office supplies, printing, advertising, wages, consulting, office expenses, cash provided. Let's think. Program. Oh, here we go. Program expenses. 200, like basically $300,000. So this is from 2009, 2008. Okay, so they spent, so actually, no, they do have some. So it does look like they had some from this, you know, audit. It looks like they did have, at least in this 2009, 2008 period, it looks like they did have program expenses of roughly $300,000. You scroll down there, they listed everything as a program. I'm trying to think where that is. Okay, let's see where that is. They listed everything as that. So all of this, yeah. Well, that's because, I mean, that's kind of like what it is basically. So that's their 200. Okay, so that's what their thing is. Yeah, so I mean, that's basically, you know, all the things that they did. There's no itemized list of like what they were specifically doing on each of these like trips, what they were doing, what the grant was for, what any of these specific things were. But I mean, these are just like, you know, day-to-day expenses of, you know, any kind of a company. And the idea here is, okay, they're doing, you know, malaria, I don't know what you want to call it, like grant exposure, you know, they're doing some stuff against that. They don't have an itemized list. I don't see anything specifically that's going to say what they, like did on all these things. And the organization sustained significant operating losses in each of the last 5 years. Temporarily restricted nest assets, time restricted advocacy project. So terrorist advocacy. And then they spent money on a new website. Let's think. Maintenance and repairs. No. Income taxes. Reports gifts of cash is restricted support if they receive donors. Nope. And financial statements considered all highly liquid assets. Cash equivalents. There's a health advocacy group. Increased economic freedom in its work. It therefore promotes market-based solutions, economic freedom. Yeah, I mean, so like realistically, this is kind of like a totally normal. I can't say I'm an expert, but to me, this does look like, they were doing what they were saying here, which is like, all right, we're making a book. We're trying to raise awareness on this kind of stuff. This guy's running, this program, this company. He's got a research assistant that's doing research probably for this book. And then they're out there, doing that stuff. Which, yeah, I mean, makes sense to me. I'm trying to see, let me see, what was the other place that I was looking for? Yeah. I want to see if there is an equivalent we could look at. Let's look at you for Greenpeace. Let's look at. All right. Chair, treasurer, hours listed. She worked 3 hours a week. She got $10,000. 24 chief operating, $100,000, $140,000, $100,000 for half. Okay. So here's Greenpeace. Greenpeace is a much larger organization, obviously, but these people are working 20 hours and they're getting paid, a little bit more. Obviously, I was going to say inflation's a thing for sure. So let's say they're getting paid roughly double what this guy is for all of these different things. Chief program officer, they're getting paid $230, so for 40 hours a week. So chief program officer, this is probably an equivalent position to this Richard Tran executive director guy, because there's only, he's the only person who's like, managing the program, and he's getting paid $70,000 in $2,009 for 40 hours a week. She's getting paid $230,000. Okay. And then also $45,000 in other compensation. I'm not Greenpeace, a professional protest organization. Basically, I mean, it's essentially I'm just trying to find like other environmental issues, like other environmental groups, to try to establish some kind of like parity between the two, to see what like a normal, environmental program nonprofit would pay its directors. Because obviously, if this guy's doing 40 hours a week, this is his job. Then I mean, he's got to get paid, right? Like, I mean, yeah. So I mean, like, it does make sense to be like, okay, and this is true of, let's be honest, every single nonprofit, their executives get paid, because they have to be compensated for their time, otherwise no one would do it. And the reason why they're nonprofits is, so they get like better tax breaks, so that they don't have to do that type of stuff. So Greenpeace is about like environmental issues, specifically. But yeah, it's a similar thing to this, where in which the money that they're getting in, they're spending on certain initiatives where they're saying like, okay, we want to spend money to stop ocean pollution. We'll spend some money on that. We'll spend money on, commercials. We'll spend money on, writing books or funding studies or whatever. All of those types of things. So to me, this is looking like a reasonable organization. Like none of this stuff in terms of like fiscal, like fiscally, this looks very similar to other organizations that are doing similar type stuff. So this doesn't like scream scam to me. Just looking into this, it does not scream like crazy scam. Like it doesn't seem like this was it doesn't seem like this is necessarily an organization that was just trying to like, bilk people out of their money or it has been funded. Okay, and then let's also see this. All right, a statement is shared who also notes that it's been funded by ExxonMobil. Let's check this. Climate change. I mean, it's a book, so I'm not going to be able to read that. But that doesn't mean that it was fully funded by ExxonMobil. It just means that, they might have given it some money. A lot of these places get, compensations from these places. I'm not convinced it's a scam. We're questioning their motives. I mean, so here's the thing. There's not any profit in DDT. There's no profit in DDT because there's nobody's able to produce it. And obviously at this point, and this might have been why the 2015 it dropped off is because like they were not able to manufacture anymore. The guy had mentioned a couple cutoff dates. So he was basically like, hey, this is a good thing to do now. So, I mean, I don't see any like impure motivations here in terms of, I found they received a donation of $30,000 from ExxonMobil. Not particularly large considering the donor. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so that, and I mean, So, I mean, that to me doesn't scream like these guys are bought and paid for by some like, I don't know, organization that's trying to promote the use of DDT. Because, I mean, DDT is not popular. It's not a popular issue. If you're basically saying, hey, we should give cancer to puppies, no one is going to fund that. All right. So the only people that would be doing it would have like, some weird reason where they're like, okay, yeah, I know this is super unpopular. It's horrible to hear, but we've discovered that giving cancers to puppies, saves 100 billion lives a year. Like whatever, like there's some huge trade-off to this like wildly unpopular thing where we go, yeah, look, we know we're going to be vilified for this, but it's actually a really good thing if we do it. So we're going to try to raise as much, visibility as possible for this issue because we think we should try to do it. That to me seems the most likely scenario here, that this organization is just looking at DDT as a good way to mitigate malaria. As of right now, let me see if I can co-pilot myself out of here. Let me see if I can co-pilot myself here. All right. Is DDT manufacture banned? Yep. It is banned with a few exceptions. Global banned. It's banned for agricultural use. Do stop. Blah, 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 blah. Yes. Banned in 1972. Yes. India has been the only registered producer of DDT since 2008, manufacturing it for mosquito control and exporting it to a few countries in Africa where malaria remains a major threat. However, even India is now working to phase it out by developing safer alternatives like biopesticides and insecticidal nets, bioaccumulative infinity tissues. Okay, so it looks like they did not re-examine this issue in terms of the UN ban on it, because they were saying like they wanted it totally phased out by 2020. So it looks like it more or less is at this point, possibly in India. There's a little bit of stuff there, and I mean, they don't show any data here, but I've seen the data specifically for the efficacy of DDT in controlling malaria, and it's alarming. It's insane. Like they basically eliminated it. They basically just completely, like just totally got rid of malaria worldwide when they were using DDT everywhere. And I mean, malaria is like a huge killer. It has been throughout, all of human history. Like if you look through like wars, depending on where they're fought, like the biggest killer is not the enemy, it's malaria. In a lot of cases, in a lot of conflicts, the thing that kills the most amount of soldiers on both sides would be diseases, specifically like insect-borne diseases like malaria. So to me, I mean, these are good points, and I'm glad you're raising them. And I'm glad that we looked through this. But to me, on balance, it does kind of sound like the motivations were pretty decent. I'm not shocked by the things that I learned. Nothing in here screams like they were doing this to enrich DDT producers, because I mean there aren't any. There haven't been any in, looks like, South Africa. The other guy, these guys are based in the US, so they're not, the US definitely has not been producing DDT for, at this point, let's see, this was 2010, 72, so like 40 years. So to me, on balance, I would say I think their motivations are probably pure. Let me see.
I knew nothing about DDT, but spoke to many malaria scientists about these problems and visited these malaria areas where, visiting a clinic where there are children 2 to a bed and lying on the floor suffering from malaria makes a pretty strong impression. And I got interested because, through that, and have continued. That was in 99, 2000, and have continued to campaign on this, and we were writing the book to set the record straight, basically.
And very briefly, tell us, what's the title come from, The Excellent Powder?
It comes from a speech that Winston Churchill made in 1944 when he explained that they were using the excellent DDT powder to save the lives of troops and civilians in the European and Pacific theaters of war.
I want to thank Don Roberts and Richard Tren, authors.
Okay, so let's try to see The Excellent Powder, DDT. I wonder if this is going to have an article about it. It's got an Amazon. In the world's most successful public health, it is the world's most successful public health insecticide, saving millions upon millions of lives from insect-borne diseases. Yet, despite decades of use and thousands of studies on its effects, DDT remains the world's most misunderstood chemical. Orchestrated, well-financed, earnest, but erroneous campaigns forced most countries to ban DDT without scientific justification. These campaigns created many myths and fears about DDT. This book, The Excellent Powder, DDT's Political and Scientific History, dispels these myths and sets the record straight about this chemical, which continues to save hundreds of thousands of lives in poor countries today and could save hundreds of thousands more. Authors Don Roberts and Richard Tren, with the help of Roger Bate and Jennifer Zambone, present the most comprehensive assessment to date of the science, history, and public policy of this intriguing and misunderstood chemical. Despite decades of scientific evidence about how DDT works and the effects it has on human and environmental health, widespread misunderstandings about the nature and function of DDT have fundamental implications for the ongoing use of DDT in malaria control and the development of new and effective replacements. Roberts and Tren challenge those misunderstandings. Specifically, the excellent powder delineates how DDT's effectiveness as a public health insecticide lies not on how many mosquitoes it kills, but in how many it repels. By keeping malaria-bearing mosquitoes away from the people they could infect, the chemical breaks the cycle of infection and death. Roberts and Tren refute the popular notion that DDT caused the decline and near extinction of several bird species, such as the bald eagle and peregrine falcon. Reviewing the history of the changing fortunes of these birds in the United States, they find that direct action by man, such as hunting, poisoning, and land use changes, pushed these bird populations to their nadir. Improved legislation and enforcement of that legislation, along with well-funded programs to reintroduce birds, accounts for their rising abundance in the U.S. Banning DDT played little or no part in their recovery. And I will say that lines up with the time frame in terms of like when like the bird population rebounds and when it declines. It does line up from what I can tell. Most importantly, the excellent powder reveals that evidence that DDT harms human health is weak, failing the most basic epidemiological criteria required to prove a cause and effect relationship. The evidence that the chemical can save lives, however, is overwhelming. In spite of this, some activists and researchers continue to undermine the use of DDT in malaria control on the flimsiest and most questionable grounds. Let's think. Only 16 ratings. Let's look at the 1-star rating here. And I can't get into it. I'm not going to sign in. Okay. So to me, that does make it seem like, I mean, like that, to be honest, I mean, obviously, look, this is 15 years ago, and we live in a different world. These people were maligned by, let's call it the, scientific consensus of the day. And, they went against the narrative that DDT is bad. This is taught in every school, okay? It makes sense to me that everyone who's been taught that would have a cognitive bias towards believing that. Because if not, if you have to re-examine that takes a lot of like pain and suffering and mental anguish. Oh my God, I've been lied to. I've been believing this thing that is false for so long. You have a cognitive desire to retain the frames that you've built up, because it's been a lot of time and effort to build them up, and you've done a lot of actions based on them. It's very difficult to break out of them. So the fact that these guys are saying something that runs so counter to that, it makes sense that they would be maligned for it. And I don't think, I mean, maybe they're the stupidest people who've ever existed, and they didn't realize that, that would be the case, and that, I don't know, they would be hailed as conquering heroes for DDT. To me, it doesn't seem like something people would throw their reputation away for, unless there was like something they actually believed in, which is like, and again, for something like this, where it's like, yeah, malaria is a big killer. It is. It still remains so. If we can do something to stop it or slow it down, that's worth, our reputations being kind of slandered or degraded, or, like whatever. Like this is worth it. We're saving a lot of people's lives. That to me makes more sense. I mean, that's to me, that's kind of the way this looks. And I do remember from kind of like, my own reading of articles, and again, this is old, that this was generally speaking the case, that around this time people were looking back at DDT and they were thinking to themselves, was this actually, a big giant deal? or was it just, like a moment of like public hysteria? People got absolutely up in arms over this stuff, and it's retained the same sort of stigma that it got at this point in time, and nobody's just refuted it. Like this reminds me very much of the debate about like nuclear power in the US and I was going to say Western Europe, but there's plenty of there's more nuclear reactors in Western Europe per capita than there is in the US. It's like France specifically. But the idea of nuclear power is really kind of still taboo. Like we're not making reactors. We're not really pursuing that as part of our energy policy when we should. It's absolutely the safest form of energy manufacture we've got. It's by far, no question, 100%. It's the best. It's the cleanest by far, and super safe. We've got all the resources we could, ever use. We've got a ton of uranium we can mine in the U.S. We could be energy independent, and all the energy would be much cheaper, much safer, much cleaner. But the environmental lobby does not like the idea of nuclear energy. They hate it. They go, no, we don't want nuclear. We want solar. We want wind energy. And I was going to say I'm fine with it. I'm not really fine with it. I think it's a completely dead end technology. I don't think we don't have the battery technology to make it work. We also don't have the, area to do it. It's just, it's not a doable thing. If it was a doable thing, we would be doing it. Nuclear energy is the way forward if we can kind of deprogram people from the brainwashing that they got after like 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl. And really not even those things. Like a movie came out about like nuclear apocalypse, and it just like fried people's brains. So this malaria stuff to me seems very similar to that. It's just like they're not, yeah, like it just seems like something where very reasonable people are trying to look at this stuff very reasonably and go, okay, look, there's trade-offs here. Maybe there is some environmental consequences for using this stuff, but the, reward in terms of human lives is enormous. So like this is absolutely a trade-off we should take. And I think that's reasonable. And from what I can tell from all the research we did into their finances, the claim that these, they didn't spend any money on program stuff doesn't, I don't know if that, okay. The real problem with DDT is what it degrades into. DDT is a molecule that's very difficult to remove from the body. It's fat soluble and can be found in almost every U.S. adult today still. Yeah, that's true. I did look into that. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of evidence that it's like massively, how would we describe it? Affecting to people's health. And it's again like if we're talking about it in terms of health issues, like, all right, well, what's the difference? What's the trade-off here? You have this thing that's going to give you like a small risk of a disease sometime during your lifespan because it's, let's say it's present in your body forever, versus the possibility of getting malaria. Now, maybe in the US, we say, okay, you know what? Malaria is very treatable here. Malaria is super rare here. And, we've got other pesticides that we can use. We've got other things that, we've got windows. Generally speaking, people aren't outside as much. The odds of you getting malaria and the odds of you having a bad outcome from malaria actually is lower than the idea of DDT poisoning your system. And we'd go, okay, so for the US, makes sense. The US, all right, we'll ban it. Or we don't even need to ban it. We just say, yeah, we wouldn't use it. Like, makes sense. And maybe in certain areas, maybe in like Louisiana or something like that, where they have a higher rate of malaria or mosquito or, insect-borne diseases, we would actually like to use DDT. If we can use it, we've made the risk-reward analysis, we'll decide to do it. That's great. That's fine. Fantastic. But in other countries, like in Africa and these types of places where they don't have, the treatment facilities to deal with malaria, they don't have, windows as much, you've got all kinds of stuff, right? For them, DDT is a, like once a year treatment that's cheap that basically reduces their risk of getting malaria and having a bad reaction from malaria to zero. For them, of course they would use it. If it's available, they'll use it. But yeah, I mean, so that is the thing. But yeah, so I mean the problem. All right, this is the DDT stuff. I might try to get this book. I might try to find this book, the excellent powder stuff. I would agree if it wasn't so easily spread to neighboring regions. DDT can spread around the world due to its common delivery method. I'm guessing that means like the way they're dropping it on areas and it's kind of like getting carried by the wind. So that's how they do it if they're using like super broad stuff. But I think you can also see stuff where they're like spraying it in more targeted fashion. And I'm guessing that's how we would do it nowadays. Yeah. So let me see. I wonder if I could find. All right, so let me check this excellent powder thing. I might actually get this. I'm going to just make a little tab for myself. Yeah, you can also spray it, but it's not as effective. So then how do they do it? How do they do it otherwise? If they don't like spray it? Because I mean, obviously we saw like some videos of them like dropping it out of airplanes and stuff. Is that the only other way that they do it? Is like dropping it out of planes and like helicopters and stuff? And again, I mean, that stuff's definitely also like a mitigatable risk because you can probably was aerosol. Is that different from spraying? The most common use is different from spraying it. I would assume the aerosol version of it is basically just like generally when they're talking about aerosol stuff, they just mean the particles are small enough to be, sprayed out of like a can. So let's check. Okay. Properties, chemistry, DDT resistance, many government curtail, disease control vector, malaria control. Let's see, initial effectiveness. Trying to find out how do they spray it. Environmental, the book, silent spring, caused cancer, initial effectiveness. Let's see, non-chemical. Okay, the country resumed DDT vector control with. I mean, dusting on it. Okay, yeah. So that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Gotcha. The dropping it and stuff out of planes and stuff. That's true. But I mean, like again, this is the thing where it's like, I mean, people dust crops all the time. A lot of this is just kind of, yeah. I mean, again, it's like, this is the thing where you look at it and you go, look, man, there's never harm-free, blah, blah, blah. You know, there's always trade-offs. Is it worth dealing with? And I think, again, I mean, I will say, I don't think anybody's really, all right, criticisms. Okay, let me check this. Criticism of restrictions on DDT use. Restrictions on DDT usage have been criticized by some organizations opposed to the environmental movement, including Roger Bate of the Pro DDT advocacy group. Let's see who this guy is. Funding. This coach. Okay. Advocacy group, Africa Fighting Malaria. It was available as aerosol for small-scale house use. My father used to use it. In the U.S., I mean, you don't have to dox yourself and tell me exactly where you live, but yeah, for small-scale house use, yeah, we've definitely seen some stuff on that where, like, yeah, they would spray it on certain areas. And obviously, I mean, here's the other side of this. I have, like, insecticides that I've aerosol use, like, you know, sprayed around the house for, like, bugs and stuff. I'm sure that stuff's not good for you. I'm sure that stuff's not good for you. I don't know how bad it is for you, but I would imagine, yeah, if you were to, like, spray it and get it in front of you, you know, get it into your lungs and that kind of stuff, it would probably be not good for you. And again, I mean, I'm not in an area where I give a crap about malaria. I don't think there's any malaria cases around me. And if I were to get some sort of thing like that, I would imagine I could probably go to the hospital and get treated for it, and it wouldn't be a big deal. I could get, I don't know, antibiotics or whatever the hell is used to treat it, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So, I mean, you know, I don't know if I would use it, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like just taking it off the menu entirely and going like, yeah, no, nobody can use it. You know, even, yeah, it's one thing to be like, hey, this thing has a lot of risks. Here they are. This way you're well aware of them. And now, you know, the people in your community can make an informed decision on whether or not they want to use it. Makes way more sense to me than, you know, the UN, the world, or, you know, the US saying, nope, we've decided you can't use it. It's banned. We're not doing it. Like, for some things, maybe that makes sense if it's like there's no upside whatsoever and they're massively dangerous or massively harmful. But otherwise, I'm like, I kind of feel like people should be able to, you know, decide on their own. All right, Libertarian Think Tank, Competitive Enterprise Institute. These sources oppose restrictions on DDT and attribute large numbers of deaths to such restrictions, sometimes in the millions. Yeah, malaria is not a problem in developed countries. Antiparasitics are very effective. Yeah, which is definitely the case. And again, you know, I mean, that kind of makes sense why you would be. Yeah, so I mean, like, that is sort of the thing where, like, when I hear people, like, you know, opposing it, it's like, are these people opposing it because they think that, you know, DDT is insanely harmful and they don't want it, like, around them? Or is it, you know, for environmental reasons? For it's like, okay, like, we don't want the eagles to die. And I'm like, look, I don't want the eagles to die either. But I don't think Africa has, you know, bald eagles. I'm 100% positive they don't have bald eagles. Maybe they have some other birds there that they don't want to die, but my guess is that, you know, if given the choice between, you know, your entire family dying of malaria because you can't get the, you know, treatment for it, or the treatment's very difficult, very expensive, very blah 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 blah, you'd probably go, yeah, I'll take the dead birds and my kids alive, rather than the opposite. These arguments were rejected as outrageous by former WHO scientist Socrates Litzios. May Berenbaum, University of Illinois entomologist, says to blame environmentalists who oppose DDT for more deaths than Hitler is worse than irresponsible. I mean, it's definitely a spicy claim. More recently, Michael Palmer, a professor of chemistry at the University of Waterloo, has pointed out that DDT is still used to prevent malaria, that its declining use is primarily due to increases in manufacturing costs, and that in Africa, efforts to control malaria have been regional or local, not comprehensive. Okay. Let's think. I'm trying to see how this is like a counterpoint. DDT is still used to prevent malaria. Its declining use is primarily due to increases in manufacturing costs. And in Africa, efforts to control malaria have been regional or local, not comprehensive. Okay. I don't know how that's like a... I don't know how that's a counterpoint. Criticisms of DDT ban often specifically reference the 1972 United States ban, with the erroneous implication that this constituted a worldwide ban and prohibited use of DDT in vector control. Reference is often made to Silent Spring, even though Carson never pushed for a DDT ban. Okay, I mean, I don't know if that's true, and it does seem like Silent Spring specifically mentioned like DDT being a bad thing. So even if she didn't, I mean, like you could easily say that this is a true statement. So, hey, look, this person who wrote Silent Spring, Rachel Carson, never pushed for a DDT ban. She just said that it was horrible, that it was awful, that it was killing people, that it was, the worst thing ever. I'm not pushing to ban it. I'm just saying it's a horrible, 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 horrible thing. That's basically like pushing for it to not be used or a ban or something like that. You're pushing for its non-usage because you're saying it's such a bad thing. But yeah, I mean, that's a true statement. John Quiggin and Tim Lambert wrote the most striking feature of the claim against Carson is the ease with which it can be refuted. Investigative journalists Adam Sarvana and others characterize these notions as myths, promoted principally by Roger Bate of the pro-DDT advocacy group, yada yada. Okay, the question, let me see, who's this guys? All right, the question that malaria control experts must ask is not which is worse, malaria or DDT, but rather, what are the best tools to deploy for malaria control in a given situation, taking into account the on-the-ground challenges and needs, efficacy, cost, and collateral effects, both positive and negative, to human health and the environment, as well as the uncertainties associated with all these considerations. Yeah, I mean, that seems like a very reasonable... That seems like a completely reasonable position to have. It's kind of what I've been saying. It's exactly what I've been saying. And taking, a tool out of the toolbox, DDT, which is, maybe specifically a good solution for some people in certain parts of the world, is not great. My guess, and again, here's the other side of this. The ban, specifically in 1972, is not a worldwide ban. Yes, that's true. However, if the majority of the DDT produced in the world was produced in the US, then you basically cut the supply of it massively, and then you made other people then pick up the slack. And then if, there's a huge market that's been cut off, the US, then, you've basically, you've effectively created not a ban, but close enough to a ban to, make people stop using it. That also would increase manufacturing costs if, all the companies that were making it were in or were serving the United States. Okay, we've only got, so many more people to buy from, and therefore in Africa, you're maybe having to use subpar solutions. So, I mean, it's a complicated thing, but I mean, that's kind of the way of the world. It does just mean that, unfortunately, these kind of big, giant blanket declarations like DDT is bad miss the point and have unintended consequences down the line. So it's like, yeah, is it possible that, you know, like how many people die of malaria? Let's see. Let's go to here. How many people die of malaria every year? I doubt it's going to say here. Deaths, 608,000, I'm assuming, in 2022. Let's see. World Malaria Report. Okay, so then, yeah. So basically, 500,000 people a year, roughly, are dying of malaria. If DDT, and I mean, we do know DDT actually does a pretty good, it does a pretty good job of making it so that, you know, malaria doesn't spread because mosquitoes don't bite you. If you could save 500,000 people every year from, let's say, 1972, let's just say 40 years, let's say 50 years, that would be, am I, let me double check here. Is that 2 billion people? No, there's no way that's right. There's no way that's right. Let me think. All right, so let's say it's 50 years, 25. No, that's right. It's like, no, it's like 25 million. It's like 25 million. Yeah, 25 million people. Assuming 100% efficacy and assuming the efficacy wasn't diluted over the years, the mosquitoes don't develop massive resistance for these types of things. You know, that would be millions of people. And I think it would be fair to say that even if it wasn't, you know, 25 million, I mean, yeah, like what's the number that you are willing to sacrifice? What's the number of people where you're just like, yeah, it's, you know, whatever. An extra 10 million people died that didn't have to over this 50-year period because we decided to ban DDT. And that made the prices go up across the world, and therefore poorer nations, which were the most affected by this, were no longer, you know, used. Okay. I mean, yeah, very possible. So, I mean, realistically, yeah, I mean, I don't like it. Now, the funny thing here is that we got on this because we were watching this video about unethical ant war tactics that mentioned like chemicals. I forget what it even was. Consider also the dangers and the potential loss of life from diseases caused from DDE buildup in the food chain, though. Even discounting the potential environmental effects. I mean, that is definitely an aspect that you would have to examine. I don't know what that is. I mean, I have no idea what that is. And again, I mean, you know, that's kind of the thing that I'm saying is like, look, it's a trade-off. I don't know how well that's studied. I don't know what the buildup in the food chain for that would be. I don't know what the, you know, exact chemical, you know, effects of that are on people, on, you know, cellular and these types of things. And I mean, let's look at things like plastics in the environment. We're still using plastic every day. Plastic is not banned. Plastic is getting built up in the food chain, and tons of heavy metals that are easily absorbed into plastic are being, you know, absorbed into microplastics in the ocean. Those heavy metals are then you know, heavy metals and radioactive stuff are being, you know, eaten by fish, and, you know, those fish are, you know, it's concentrating up and up and up and up and up. We're not banning plastics because, you know, we find them more useful. It's just like, it's insane. The problem with these sorts of compounds is they could take decades for their real effects to become evidence, like lead or asbestos. I mean, I have problems, like, I mean, lead lead paint, unless I'm mistaken and the science has changed, the amount of lead you need to ingest to have serious problems is like insane. You basically need to be eating paint chips, which people did. People would like peel paint off the walls that was lead and they would eat it. I don't know if it tasted good or something, but that was a real thing. Asbestos, sort of the same thing. I mean, it's not to say that it doesn't cause cancer. It does, but a lot of that is like from the people who were installing it, or it would be in buildings that were like condemned and they were not properly maintained. So they would get like the asbestos would be kind of like aerosolized and it would be in the vents and stuff, and people were breathing it in, and that's what was causing it. And it's like, that's not how it was supposed to be used. It tastes sweet. Does lead paint seriously taste sweet? Does it taste sweet? I mean, that would make sense. That would make sense because literally, I think that is actually like the amount of lead to get serious lead poisoning. You literally have to be eating the paint chips. If it tastes sweet, that is, I don't want to say it's hilarious, but it is hilarious. Because I think that's the only way. That's the only reason it makes sense to be peeling paint off the walls and eating it. One of its compounds does. Okay. All right. That's awesome. That is actually really funny. Because that makes sense. Because I was always like, why the hell would anybody be eating paint chips? It makes sense if it's sweet. Because a lot of it would be like kids who would be peeling paint chips off and eating it. That's hilarious. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, for sure. Like there's a lot of these things that are, potentially damaging, potentially bad. We should know about them. That's a great thing that science can do. Science can examine these things and it can determine the actual like projected harm and harm ratio and rate for any substance that we're using. And people can then make a determination whether or not they want to take that risk and whether or not they want, their community to take that risk. So people can go, hey, you know what? We're going to get rid of lead paint. We're going to get rid of asbestos. And we're going to use something else. We're going to use fiberglass insulation. And it's like, okay, well, fiberglass insulation is not as good at like fire retardation. So some people are going to die in a fire that would be saved if they'd had it in asbestos insulation, as opposed to fiberglass or whatever it is. Okay, you know what? We're fine with that. We think the cancer risk is more dangerous than the fire risk. Okay, cool, awesome. That's fine. That's great. That's a reasonable conversation. It's a great debate to have. I'm glad people had that debate. But for other things, they're just like, a book comes out that says you're killing all the eagles by using DDT, and it doesn't even work. We should just get rid of it. Okay, that's fine. If you don't want to use it in the US, cool. That's fine. But, you basically made it so that, unless I'm mistaken, and I'm pretty sure I'm not here because it, is a ban in the US, if you then make it so that, the US cannot manufacture DDT and, all right, well, then you basically consigned a potential part of the world to malaria forever because, you in the US are not affected by malaria that much. You're like, it's not a big deal to us. We've got, antiparasitics. We've got the drugs to treat this stuff. We don't really care. It's a luxury belief. Like, yeah, like we don't care if DDT gets banned. Yeah, if it's banned and it affects people in some other country, screw them. Who cares? Yeah. Into your blood, rather. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Let me think here. Can still be effective against resistance. The avoidance. The researchers argue that it is best for use in IRS. Another killing or irritating, encouraging the development of resistance. Others argue that the avoidance behavior slows eradication, unlike other insecticides such as pyrethroids. DDT requires long exposure to accumulate lethal dose. However, its irritant property shortens contact periods. For these reasons, when comparisons have been made, better malaria control has generally been achieved with pyrethroids than with DDT. Better malaria control. I wonder if the malaria control they're mentioning here is actually outdoor sleeping and night duties are common, implying that the exciter-repellent effect of DDT, often reported useful in other countries, actually promotes outdoor transmission. Well, I mean, that's if you're not using it everywhere. Yeah. So, I mean, again, so it seems like, the DDT stuff would still be useful in other places. And perhaps, the reason why it works as well as it does, or would work as well as it does, and it has to work, it has to be deployed in a certain way to make it effective. It has to be, super, super widespread. And yeah, maybe that does change the calculus on whether or not it's a good idea to use it, for your country. I totally understand that. Again, that's part of your conversation that you should be having. Reducing these issues to like super quick, easy, like one hot button issue of like, this is bad for eagles. Because that's what most people remember. That's what I remembered about DDT, is that, it made eagle eggs soft. It thinned them out. And that was why it got, out. So that's what was in everyone's mind. That's why they passed this ban. So, yeah. Pyrethroids are the current go-to for insect control. It's a synthetic compound that mimics the effects of a specific flower. Yeah, I'm actually fairly certain I'm aware of the pyrethroid stuff. But again, like, all right. Through indoor applications. Let's see what this says. Yeah. Are they, I would imagine these are not as employed as like widely. And maybe that was like a big portion of why DDT was so effective, was because you could, you could dust large areas and basically just like sort of carve out an area where mosquitoes would not go through it, so that you essentially made, like your town or your area or whatever, like just totally fenced off from any mosquitoes or, insects in general. So then you were able to, destroy all of their habitat in your town, in your community. And then, because you're ringed off, you're totally, you're totally insulated from any malaria. That'd be my guess. And I'm guessing the pyrethroid stuff is not, they're not doing that kind of stuff. Because, like, hey, they're toxic to aquatic, especially fish. All right, well, do we care about the fish? Obviously, we don't. We do not care about fish nearly as much as we care about, like, birds or mammals in general. And then, they're toxic to insects such as bees. Okay, well, we like bees. Bees are good. And then, they're toxic as opposed to, the guys in here were saying that DDT is, it is toxic to a degree to mosquitoes, but a lot of it is not, it's not used to kill, really. It's trying to repel mosquitoes, to keep them out of a certain area. So, that's better. So you're not affecting the food chain as much. And again, you'd go, all right, well, like, what's the calculus here? What's the risk reward? So you kind of have to ask this stuff. And it's really a weird one. And I understand, I'm just now thinking, I'm like, we said we were going to be yapping about YouTube videos. We've just been going into an absolute, hole about DDT, which is hilarious, and I'm all for it. But yeah, I do like this stuff. All right, so let's think. So I think I will actually try to find this book and see if I can read up on it a little bit, just to see if any of their claims are true on any of this stuff. I'm not going to read any like articles on it, because I don't trust them. but I will potentially try to. I think I might be able to find that book somewhere, and I just want to see what their like if they refute any of those claims about eagles, about wildlife stuff. I will say that the like years in which the decline of eagles and then the resurgence, it does make me think that the DDT as the sole cause or even like a main cause is probably not true. Probably not. Could be, but it seems unlikely. Especially because, you know, we've seen that kind of stuff with like so many other species, like wolves, you know? It's much more likely that it is like hunting or poisoning or, you know, like trapping or something like that. Land usage rights, you know, you're chopping down all the trees, you're, you know, because eagles like to nest in like really specifically high trees. So if you chop them all down, then they have to nest in lower things, or like they move to other areas. It's, you know, it's likely that, you know, these bigger systemic issues are to blame than, you know, one specific chemical. That'd be my guess. All right, going back to the ant war crimes video.
Neutralize the fire ants' venom. This counterweapon renders them nearly invincible in skirmishes with fire ants, allowing the crazy ants to overrun territory by literally out-chemicaling their foes.
Tawny ants, tawny ants, tawny ants. I wonder if barking will ever get boring to me. These ants are very mid design language-wise.
You see these ants all the time, though. I thought they were like sort of fire ants, but not.
I feel like the fire ant's iconic.
I stepped in a fire ant hill when I was a kid.
How'd that go?
Fucked my foot up.
Did they
I bet it
kill
did.
you?
Well, I think they're called fire ants because they swarm all over you and bite you 1,000 times, so it feels like you're on fire.
Yeah, it
Did you
does.
feel like you're on fire?
Yeah, it sucked.
Hell yeah, dude. You know, it's really brave of you, Don, to get over your fear of ants after that and make this video.
Just still like ants after that.
Which are the big giant ones that were in that terrible Indiana Jones movie? Driver ants!
Oh no.
Dude, it was the driver ants. There you go.
Oh man.
Monster ants, of course.
We should have known.
Bullet ants suck too.
I thought there were some ants that were so big that, like, I don't know, like this big.
Pretty big ant compared to the fingertip there. I think there is like a big fucking ant in Australia, of course. It's like on its own and it hides under a plant, and then you walk by and it like bites your foot off.
Oh!
Fuck.
Damn.
End of section. Hostage number 3. Hostage taking and slavery. Article 34 of the 4th Geneva Convention.
Nice.
4? There were 4? What did they miss? The fucking... They missed the... Help me out here. The humans are clever, dude. We just keep inventing new ways to fuck each other.
That's probably it. Someone came up with some new war crimes.
Like, okay, so we're not allowed to do mustard gas.
We probably shouldn't be allowed to do that either.
We can't kill people who've already been shot. Boo. We can't rape anyone. What else we got?
I guess I kept thinking of additional things.
I like this idea of Geneva
Awesome.
DLC. They just forgot about protecting civilians until the last one.
We forgot the civilians.
Oh God! Do this all over again.
Everybody come back.
Slave-making ants, or slaver ants, are brood parasites that conduct raids on other colonies to steal infants and turn them into slaves.
Jesus
That's sick.
Christ.
Whoa.
So sick.
Jesus Christ, that's awesome. Yes. But when humans do it, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not good,
They're
but
ants. They're little robots.
Yeah, they're cool little robots.
They're
exactly.
fascinating.
And their babies are worthless, so... So is this big red one stealing the little black ones?
Little baby ants.
Wow. Literally called slave-making ants. Dude, whoever discovered all these just had the most fun time ever.
For real.
Those ones are the exploding ants, and those ones are the slave ants, and those ones are the driver ants. He just fucking had the time of his life. I feel like every species of ants was taken before the convention of Down syndrome people.
Keep going.
The Council of Down Syndrome, and they just put the ant. This happens every time you discover a new ant species. You take it into the Council of Down Syndrome people, and you put it in the and you say, "These guys explode. What should we call them?" And the High Down Syndrome priest says,
"Where's it from?" Oh, you see, it's from Malaysia.
they go. The council declares these are the Malaysian exploding ants, and everyone's like, oh, yes. And session is adjourned.
I want to be on the council.
I want to be on the council too. That sounds
Dude.
like fun. I think we could make it.
You get paid, man.
God.
Oh my god. That's awesome.
After emerging in the slave maker nest, the slaves work as if they were in their own colony, foraging for food, tending to the slaver ants' eggs, feeding the slave makers, and even defending the nest. Okay, so they like it.
Well, they don't know any better. It's all
Yeah.
they've ever known. They were stolen as babies. It's just like, how does a species develop a behavior like this?
That is so weird because you got to imagine, like, they're not. I don't know, like, why? I guess you don't have to devote. I guess you don't have to devote the resources to as many eggs if you're gonna steal, baby ants from another colony. You can just be like, all right, we can make half as many eggs, and I guess making eggs is like super resource intensive, but also like they're ants, dude. Like you're gonna be laying a crap load of eggs. I don't know. I mean, that's just so crazy.
The way obviously evolution works, right, is you have genes that mutate randomly, and sometimes they make like a little micro change of how something behaves. And if the environment favors that change for breeding more, that gene spreads, and then you have more of these assholes, and that gene starts mutating, and over time you get something.
That's just absolute total nonsense. All right, clearly, aliens injected genes into the environment years ago, and they were basing it on like what was super cool about their favorite video games, and they were like, oh man, that thing's awesome, so we're gonna put that in there. We want that as a possibility because I mean, obviously, the idea of just pure genetic evolution is just totally crazy. There's no way. It doesn't work like that. I am being facetious.
Completely different.
Yeah, but
that means
what does that?
Wait. But that means there was one asshole who was the first slave maker. He just had a gene where it's fucking twitching and looking at all the other ants like going about their business, and he was like, I'm gonna make slaves of that.
I don't feel like working.
Its little ant head is just like doing this, and the antennae are like fucking twitching and shit, and somehow he just is overwhelmed with the ant-like desire to make a slave. And because everyone else is doing.
The funny thing though is that like for a species like an ant, it actually kind of doesn't make sense. Like that, because most ants do not reproduce. Like the all of the reproduction is done by the queen ant. So it actually has to be like one queen ant had like a gene change that made them, that made ants, instead of just grabbing like food resources from another colony, they also grabbed eggs. And instead of eating those eggs, they, hatched them or something like that. And it probably wasn't even that. It probably wasn't even like a conscious decision. It was like, all right, what, like, do you preferentially eat the eggs or like the other food? And, a lot of ants would have been like, a lot of ant things would have, preferentially eaten the eggs because they were like more nutritious. They were more like nutrient dense, which is probably true. And then other ants were like, okay, like they were just lazy. Like they were like preferentially not eating them, or they, they didn't have as much of an appetite. They grabbed all the eggs. And then so some of the eggs, hatch, and, the ants that are in there are just, programmed to, go out, forage, do this kind of stuff. They've got scent marking. They're doing that kind of stuff. So it's like, they're basically just, you're kidnapped. And so it's not really slaves. You're just like, they just don't know that they're in another colony. Like it doesn't make a difference to them. It's very weird. And so, I mean, like, that's the thing. It's like a lot of these things, like we're anthropomorphizing these ants by saying like they're taking slaves. And it's like, no, they were just taking all the resources from like another colony of ants. One of those resources was, ant eggs, which are just, food for another ant. But they just, for whatever reason, don't eat them as quickly as they do whatever other resources they have. And therefore, those ants that hatch are, whatever, taken into it. And then you also have to imagine, the genes that, an ant, if it smells like a different kind of ant, like, hey, you're a different species of ant, or you're from a different colony, it's gonna kill that ant because it's like you're an invader. So that ant, that species of ant, the slave taker ant, basically has to also have like a lower or a higher tolerance for other species of ants. Like they have to. Otherwise, they would just kill them all. They wouldn't use them.
Doing his bidding, fucking collecting his scraps, and I don't know, putting a leaf on the queen. He gets to fuck all the women's. I'm pretty sure that's how ant world works.
I think it might all be female often.
Not exactly.
These are all chicks! Video over, dude. They're not all women, dude. You're crazy. They're called drones. That's male. Google it, but I'm gonna cover my eyes, and if it's an answer I won't like, just tell me the answer I do like.
There you go.
Oh no. Is this video ruined?
It's only the flying ants.
Oh no, this fuck, it's who cares? Dude. Ruined?
Wait a
It's
minute.
only the
All right, male ants known as drones are the winged members of the colony whose sole purpose is to mate with a queen, after which they die. They are produced from unfertilized eggs for lack of father and have a shorter lifespan compared to females. While most are winged, some species have males with reduced or no wings. Really? Are the winged and they are from unfertilized eggs? Huh? So all eggs in ants are inherently male and then also don't require, so I guess they're just weird like clones of the, I don't know. That is so weird.
Flying ants?
That's cool though.
Oh no, this fuck, it's who cares?
Dude, ants are fucking stupid.
No, they're not female.
Ants are fucking gay, dude.
No, they're not female.
You know what? I think we all learned a valuable lesson about sexism in this video.
They're not female.
Okay.
No, they don't procreate. Only the queen gets procreated.
That's true.
So she's a female.
There's something to be said for that.
They're just robots.
While the slaves work, the slave makers concentrate on replenishing the labor force from neighboring host nests, a process called slave raiding. Dude,
Nice.
it's so cool.
The thing with your evolution thing is only the queens reproduce. So it wasn't just one slave or ant. Suddenly it was a whole batch of little bastards.
Oh,
Yeah.
The queen was
Yeah.
fucking evil bitch.
That's what I was saying.
Something was up with her.
Yep.
So she's the first one. That's interesting because this is all incredibly faulty science, by the way. Just getting that out there. But does that mean they would have evolved this behavior way quicker? If you're right and it's all top down, and suddenly you've got a whole fucking colony, and that colony's dominating other colonies and making more slave colonies, you almost have evolution supercharged, like turbocharged, because it's not dependent on like one mammal at a time getting like a little fucked up wing or something.
It's an entire colony, man.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's also the fact that it's, your reproduction cycle is way shorter, which allows you to, adapt to things way faster, which is why, as like when we were talking about DDT, mosquitoes and other bugs can adapt to insecticides very quickly.
Yeah, it's like mega evolution. That's fucking tight, dude. The more I learn about ants and make things up, the cooler they become. Okay, the slave makers contribute little else. Their entire society revolves around replenishing their workforce through abductions. In fact, some slave-making ants are so biologically specialized for raiding, they've developed sickle-shaped mandibles perfect for combat, but so impractical for feeding or nest care that these ants cannot feed themselves or raise brood at all. They can't make new ones.
That's awesome.
They can make new ones. They just get someone else to childmind.
Yeah, and feed themselves. They can't even feed themselves.
What the fuck, dude? These are my favorite ones. Which I feel is going to be used against me, so I take that back. Like the slave maker ants. Fuck. Alright, in order to keep their colony running, they have to continually kidnap new workers, essentially living off the forced labor for their entire existence. I guess slavery is alive and well in America after all. Thanks a lot, ants. God, the shit you give
Isn't
me
it in
to
Malaysia
deliver
or something?
sometimes, I really, truly try my best. Wait, so these are American ants?
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Oh, really?
Southern.
We have
please, 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 please. Please, 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 please.
Northern parts.
Oh no.
You know,
ant drones are haploid. They don't get a full copy of DNA. They get like a random combination of both chromosomes to make one. Ants are weird. That is weird. They don't get a full copy of DNA. Okay. That is super weird.
Actually, the Democrats were the party of racism.
Kind of true. He's not wrong.
Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Don't forget
He's
that.
not wrong, actually.
Perfidy and espionage. Misleading enemies into thinking they're safe under international law, then attacking them is forbidden by Article 37 of Additional Protocol 2 of the Geneva Convention.
Nice.
Additional protocol. Yeah. They just keep.
Oh, snap, dude.
Fuck, we forgot about
hell. Come on, guys.
Come back.
Stop tricking each other.
It's called
New
perfidy,
memo.
and it's happening in the ant wars
Nice.
too. Prime example is parasitic ant queens that employ stealth and deception to take over established colonies. Sneaky fucking bitches. She does this by acquiring the colony's scent, sometimes by tussling with and rubbing against host workers outside the nest. Once she infiltrates the nest under this disguise, the rogue queen makes a beeline for the real queen of that colony and assassinates her. She can then use the stolen colony's workforce to raise her own brood. Wow. Classic women sticking their nose in where it doesn't belong.
Number 5, weaponized starvation.
I love it.
After defeating a neighboring colony, ants will consume or carry off all the food stores and prey in that territory, leaving any survivors to slowly starve. On a larger ecosystem, invasive ants demonstrate starvation tactics on a much more extreme scale. Around San Diego in the 2010s, battles were documented between invasive Argentine ant supercolonies and 3 other supercolonies in a war that may have been going on since the species' arrival a century ago. The starvation tactics of the great ant war. The starvation tactics of the great ant war of San Diego are some of the most devastating we've ever seen in ant history.
What a great job to document super colony wars that have lasted 100 years.
That is cool. Why are we fucking making cartoons?
Yeah, this is a bunch of bullshit.
We could literally just be watching ants war crime each other to death every day. You know how in like Planet Earth, the people doing the nature documentary are not allowed to intervene?
Right.
So you see like a penguin with AIDS starving to death in a natural ice cap thing. And they can't climb up and they're like, and like all you want to do is just help them up and be like, go little AIDS penguin, like you're okay, but you're not allowed. That temptation must be nothing compared to picking a side in the super colony wars of the 2010s. Imagine the temptation to just like drop a fucking Jolly Rancher in one of the colony's nests and see if it supercharges their ants.
Right.
Think of all the things you could do.
To ants, you're God.
Just spray a bunch of them with sriracha.
It's time for divine intervention. I don't like these Argentine ants very much.
You know, if the big man upstairs is real, I can understand why he would keep letting horrific plagues happen. I can understand why things fall out of the sky and crush people to death, or like babies get cancer, because how could you resist?
It's macho acts of balancing.
Oh, I don't know if I'd want to balance. I feel like I'd pick a side immediately.
Well, yeah, so the Argentine ants are invasive, so surely they're allowed to help the other guys out.
Okay, so they're invasive, right? But what if I think they're cooler?
How many species of birds need to go extinct because they're cooler?
What do you mean?
Well, that's the whole problem with invasive species is they don't just outclass the ants there. They like change the whole food chain and some animals end up dying out.
That maybe does slightly trump my rule of cool argument upon further reflection. The ecosystem's kind of fragile, huh?
Yeah.
Not really. The ecosystem is fragile in the sense that it's totally susceptible to change. But in terms of like, oh my God, there's one invasive species and it just like completely devastates the entire, like that doesn't happen. If that were happening, everything would already be devastated because like every new species is new, you know, like we've certainly, you could have seen this in like all kinds of things, like islands. Like how do islands get certain things in there? Like they have new species introduced usually via like typhoons. And, you know, there's just like a big influx of new stuff that comes over on like a raft of like debris, crashes on a new island. And then suddenly, bam, you've got a whole bunch of new invasive species that have never been there before. And, you know, obviously we have lots of, you know, islands with, you know, very thriving ecosystems and environments. So, I mean, it's not new. Obviously, it's like, to us, it's new, and we certainly have accelerated it because, you know, we've been transferring things. very quickly. But it's like, it's going to balance out eventually. It would, you know, without us interfering. And whatever the new thing is like, you know, like that's natural. This is just, you know, it's just semi-accelerated.
Also, whilst we're here, the American grey squirrel coming to England and ruining the English red squirrel's like entire existence because they were bigger and corn-fed and shit is one of the greatest tragedies of modern times. Look at red squirrels.
They're much cuter.
Look at that little tufts of hair.
Oh, that is adorable.
Show a ugly ass fucking grey squirrel. I swear to God, England has the cutest fucking critters, and then you've got these disgusting New York cockroach squirrels ruining everything.
He's not wrong.
I'm glad that the English sparrow came to America and is wiping out purple martins. Purple martins look way cooler. English sparrows are fucking like lame looking.
They suck.
But this is what you get.
Yeah.
This is retribution. Don't agree. You're not convinced?
No, it's fair. It's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fucking starlings are from England too. They suck too. They're obliterating our birds.
Shouldn't have fucking killed the red squirrels, dude.
I think that's true, yeah.
Back to Argentine ants.
Oh, ants. Argentine ants are a big problem for native ant species. They're super aggressive and good at finding food, especially sugary stuff. This means they outcompete the local ants, causing their numbers to drop and messing up the ecosystem. I like how we always, if we just read the script, we could cut out so much debate.
Right.
Even to the point where I'm like, what if you give them a Jolly Rancher? Literally the next thing. In one year, 23 native species were reduced to just 2 species over 8 years. Food shortages really hit native ant colonies hard, causing a lot of them to starve and dwindle. This then messed up the whole food chain. Like the coast horned lizard, which eats native ants, also started starving and declining because the Argentine ants wiped out its food supply.
Is this really a war crime though? Their only sin was invading. Well, that's what war's all about.
Yeah.
What war crime are we
That's a pretty boring looking ant.
Yeah.
I don't like these pricks. And by the way, the Falklands are ours. You like that?
Yeah.
This like seems like a skill issue, honestly.
Yeah, that is a based political statement. God damn, that's hilarious. And people are gonna get like mad at that. Let me see. Let me go into the comments here. I want to hear the Falklands. I want to see how many Falklands stuff he says in here. There's got to be like 1,000, right? Nothing about the Falklands? Really? Maybe YouTube cracked down on it. Man, these people are horrible. I can't believe nobody cares about the Falklands. Hilarious.
The other ants are like, oh, I can't find food. And these guys are like, I know exactly where it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, these ants are just whining.
The Argentine ants are literally just better than you. What's the fucking big deal?
What's the deal, man?
That's how the gray squirrels felt.
Damn.
Shit.
Did they breed with the red squirrels too? Or did they just out?
No, they didn't cuck the red squirrels, dude. Can you Google it and please confirm? If they fucked all the red squirrels women, I'm gonna be so upset. Did grey squirrels mate with the red squirrels? No! Yeah, that's right!
They can't mate with each other.
They can't mate, that's crazy. Genetic incompatibility.
We just came and stole all your acorns.
You can have them. Those
Yeah,
are
they're too
good,
far
decent
apart.
women. Good, decent women.
Number 6, mass environmental.
Which is funny though, because like there are definitely species out there. Like everyone always says, like, hey, like the way you mark a species differentiation is the fact that they can't interbreed. Okay, well there's like, I think it's called the Sitka, like the blacktail, or is it the mule deer? I think it's the mule deer, which is literally, as far as people can tell right now, the mule deer is literally Sitka blacktail deer and whitetail deer breed, and they made mule deer. And mule deer is like an extant species now. Like it's its own thing. It's thought of as its own species. But it's like, okay, no. It's like, you know, it's the product of this thing. So it's like mules. A horse and a donkey breed, they make a mule. It would be like mules are now an extant species. Like they're doing their own thing. They've got their own range. They've got their own stuff. So like red squirrels and gray squirrels breeding, if they were like slightly closer, they could have just bred a new species of squirrel, which is crazy. But it's the same thing with like people are always talking about like Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. for a while, everybody thought that, you know, these humans just totally wiped out the Neanderthals. And it's like, no, there was some interbreeding in, you know, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. Okay, well then, like, so I mean, how far apart can you be in terms of species, and still reproduce, you know, viable offspring? Apparently, you could be pretty far apart, because I mean, like, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals were, like, you know, pretty different.
Destruction.
Crazy.
Really taking the fun out of war, huh?
Yeah, I feel like this is a reach. I feel like these poor ants are just making war.
Oh yeah, ants.
Take this case, the ant crab war of Christmas Island.
Damn.
The invasive yellow crazy ants formed super colonies.
What color are they?
What?
What color are they?
What are they like?
They're crazy.
It's such a stupid bit. It's just mean for no reason.
Yeah.
Alright. The invasive yellow crazy ants formed super colonies up to 1,000 ants per square meter, and they unleashed such mass chemical warfare that they wiped out the island's iconic red land crabs by the tens of millions.
Are they tearing it apart?
Do they like rip his little arms off?
They're eating crab every night.
Oh.
These motherfuckers are eating better than me.
The red crabs were the keystone species keeping the rainforest floor clear. Once crazy ants killed off most of the crabs, the forest seeding composition changed and native bird populations suffered. Who's to say the ants will stop at birds and crabs? It could be us next.
Number 7. Execution of prisoners. Geneva 3, Article 13 protects prisoners of war from violence, murder, or cruel treatment. But if an ant is injured by a rivaling colony, the victorious ants will either kill them on the spot or haul them back to their nest to be killed and eaten. In one observed ant battle, minor ants of the marauder ant even pinned down a disabled enemy so a larger soldier could cleave it apart, leaving it smashed and oozing. Fucking like, ow.
Smash him.
Have you seen where the ants, like, the soldiers line up, fucking mean mugging and alpha dogging, and the little, like, workers just, like,
scurry past?
Yeah, just scurry, like, in the lines, whilst the big boy ants protect them.
Yeah, the Natural History Museum, the ant exhibit is the best. It's just like outside of an anthill, and you see all the ants in a train going in and out, pushing stuff up the hill, and then there's just like an arc of giant tank ants.
I have never seen that.
From nothing.
Dude, do you want to watch ants tonight?
Ants is pretty cool.
I love it when they're fighting the big beetle things.
It's probably just that one scene.
Yeah.
The movie's probably fucking dog shit.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you're right.
Just the one scene maybe makes it worth it.
Yeah.
You have to check it out.
It is pretty cool. Although I will say it is basically just Starship Troopers.
Survivor Clash don't live long. They're usually pulled apart and fed to the winner's larvae. Reasonable. The only prisoners some ants keep are larvae that they intend to enslave.
There you
Food
go.
for thought. Does it count as executing prisoners if you don't take any? Ooh, big brain.
See, yeah.
Probably a little war crimey if you walk up.
I don't get it. You're not allowed to hurt people in war. What does the Geneva Convention expect us to do?
Okay, so there's a soldier wounded on the battlefield. Yeah, you can't kill him when he's defenseless. That's a little war crimey. Does somehow seem less bad than taking him to a second location and then
feeding him to your babies.
Well, yeah, obviously that too.
I just feel like the Geneva Convention needs to be a bit more realistic. It's trying to put a stop to so many things that you stop taking it seriously. That
Totally.
didn't sound like true agreement.
Killing prisoners, you mean?
No, not just that, but the whole thing. If you want someone to take something seriously, you do stuff like, hey guys, no chlorine gas, that's fucked up. And everyone's like, alright, no chlorine gas. But if you like micro pick every single thing that anyone could ever do, people are just gonna be like, okay, well, I'm gonna violate this by accident anyway, because war.
Yup. Is this ringing true to anybody about anything else? Maybe this applies to some other stuff. Perhaps. Maybe.
War is messy.
So what are we?
So what's even the point?
It's all just a bunch of bullshit. Really.
It's all just words. I can remember one or two like core rules.
I feel like we're not allowed to blow up the apartment complex, but
I don't know, man.
Humans are supposed to treat enemy dead with respect. Ants do the opposite. Ants routinely mutilate, dismember, and even collect trophies from the bodies of their foes. A particularly gruesome case is that of the Florida ant.
That inherent, you just know that motherfucker's gonna be dangerous.
Yeah.
Florida ant.
It's just an example of life being cheesy. Florida man does this, but then the species of ant that lives in Florida does this.
Yeah.
Like the ants from earlier, these perfidious ants infiltrate trapjaw ant colonies using chemical camouflage to prey on them undetected.
Oh, damn.
But after overpowering a trapjaw ant, the workers will drag the body back to their own nest and dismember it, specifically hoarding the severed heads of the trapjaw ants in their chambers. Researchers have found piles of collected enemy skulls in Florida ants' quarters, with this bizarre behavior likely helping them spread the trapjaw ants' scent to remain
Right, I mean, like, that's kind of the only...
Or not, who the fuck keeps a closet full of skulls? It's pretty sweet.
I want to see what a trapjaw ant looks like.
Yeah, trapjaw ants also sound cool.
How are these guys getting alpha mobbed?
Yeah, I mean, that looks like a pretty dangerous ant.
That looks cool as heck.
Fair enough, you managed to kill him.
If you're gonna choose one ant to keep his head, it's probably these guys or the driver ants, right? So I respect it.
I guess that they just keep them as like little containers of camouflage to go back and do it again.
That's fucking sick.
That's pretty sweet.
It's just like,
but you do want to imagine they're actually trophying them.
Keep them because they look cool.
And it said it's in their quarters, like in your little ant room. You got more heads than the other ant.
So you get more ant pussy. Is that where this is going? All roads lead back to Rome, even though they're all females.
No, only the queen reproduces. So.
What's that little one carrying a baby on its back? Horrid fly controls ant's body after decapitation. Jesus Christ! What the fuck? That's disgusting.
That's so messed up.
You would like feel really lucky to be human.
For sure.
Dude, imagine we had something proportionally the same size coming out of our backs, just fucking sticking up but controlling you. And you're like, oh, this seems a bit weird. How fucked up would that be? But that's like reality for these little assholes.
So imagine he has like
so messed up.
levers.
No what, dude? Ants are cool, flies are not cool. There, I said it. Well,
I would agree.
I think we've learned some very valuable lessons about ants today.
Ants are sick little war criminals, and for that, we love them.
But if you still crave war stories, check.
Yeah. All right, and I got one more video that I wanted to look at. This one's from Warren Smith. Apparently, there's newly released Epstein footage, and it's exposing one of the biggest lies ever. I don't know if that's true. That's definitely not true, right? No way. I don't believe it.
This is crazy. We have the missing minute from the Epstein footage.
Oh, shit.
Something happens in this that caused them not to want to release this. Why did they claim it didn't exist? If you were in a fictional world going to orchestrate something like this is exactly how it would look. We see a guard walk out, walk in the direction that he would go to Epstein's cell. We see the next guard come out and stand in the middle of the room a few moments after the other guard and watches as if he's waiting for something. The other guard returns. Is it the same? Could be someone different. His face can then be picked up on camera as he walks up the stairs and exits. And that's the footage that was missing, according to
the minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every year, every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing.
If 3D rendering is accurate,
clearly not the
case.
Logically
deduce it is absolutely possible to reach his cell and not be caught by the cameras. So why did Kash Patel lie about this?
There's just no way.
That's fair.
That you could have run an op and had people go into that cell and not have any video of it.
This camera angle, it's strange that it's positioned to just the point where it can't cover the entire staircase. It is possible to make it up that staircase.
Experts who viewed the video say the limited field of view makes it impossible to definitively conclude that no one used those stairs.
Right, and I mean, this was my whole point for this.
From the data is they could simply...
Yeah, that was kind of my whole point from this, where I'm like, you know, what if there's other entrances? Like, what if there's other ways in and out? If there's only a minute missing, you're like, okay, can somebody like go in, do whatever they're gonna do, and then get out in that 1 minute time frame? No, probably not. So I'm like, so why the hell? Yeah, so like the 1 minute missing thing was never like a smoking gun to me. It was just like, why would you do this? Because I'm gonna sneeze. like it's feeding this conspiracy theory. Like, why wouldn't you? Yeah, and it's just like, well, the person who released it took what the Department of Prisons people said, and the Department of Prisons people were, covering their own ass for something else. It's just like incompetency all the way down. But it feeds into this like narrative of, it's a conspiracy. I'm not saying there wasn't a conspiracy, by the way, but it just feeds into this.
We walk from that door, slip up the right side of the staircase, and they're there. Boom. And then they're out.
Our replication of the prison shows the same conclusion. If we have Maxwell walking from the shoe entrance to Epstein's cell, we can't see him from this camera angle. Even though if we make the walls transparent, obviously we can see him. But in the raw footage, we'd have no way of knowing if somebody walked this direction.
Why would so many people so blatantly lie?
There's just no access points into places like this in the detention center he was in. If they had gotten into the cell, you would see it.
We now can see.
Yeah, he didn't know. He was just told. I gotta be honest. Why did he say that? And I'm like, because that's what he was told to say. He didn't go there. He didn't look at this stuff. He didn't like examine this stuff. He's got other stuff to do. Obviously, he should have done it. He should have looked into it. But seriously, dude, like the conspiracy here is reasonable. I get it. But it is also like, you can explain a lot of this away with like, people are trying to cover their ass and people are stupid and incompetent.
And as you can see in this excellent CBS investigation, you could actually access this stairway and Epstein's cell from a doorway invisible to the camera.
But with the primary entrance here, the pathway from the entrance to the stairs is completely out of view of the camera.
Because we can only see the left side of the staircase.
You're going to get the video of the cell, and you're going to see for yourself.
Something happens that caused them to withhold this. We know that. Otherwise, why did they withhold it?
We are working on cleaning it up to make sure.
I mean, it could have been, it also could have just been like, they screwed it up somehow. But it does seem like it would take more effort to edit out a minute than to add it in. And that'd be my guess.
Sure you have an enhanced and we're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans.
We were told we'd be given a modified and the original footage. Instead, what we got are two modified videos because both were edited in Premiere Pro. Now, it isn't clear exactly what was edited, but expert forensic analysts who spoke to Wired said the footage wouldn't stand up in court, had 1 minute, no wait, actually 3 minutes missing, and now there are reports that the DOJ has the full footage, but just hasn't released it.
If I'm looking at this objectively, this does not add up. I would be a fool to not sense something fishy going on here.
To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive.
I'm surprised more people aren't talking about this because I've never seen so many government officials be caught up in blatant lies.
Really? I feel like we've seen it a lot. It's just most of the time they're caught up in like they screwed up type lies. Like, how can I cover I did not have sex with that woman? I'm like, all right, come on. I mean, well, it depends on your definition. It's like, hey, I have never smoked marijuana. I never inhaled. All right. I mean, like, yeah, like, come on. It's so normal. It's such a normal thing for government officials to lie. Now, obviously, this is a big story and a lot of people are talking about it. So, that's why you are seeing this. But in terms of no one has ever lied on this scale before, that's not true. And again, I'm happy to say, like, yeah, there probably is something. It seems like there's something fishy going around. And it seems like that's the most obvious explanation. But I am always happy to say that, the government, politicians, whatever, are just actually that, like, incompetent. And that's what's happening. I'm happy to, if that could explain this, that's probably a good explanation too. All right. Okay, let's think. What other stuff? I have like one or two other videos. Let me think here. No, I think the other stuff that I have is going to be longer videos. You know what? We could probably watch these 2 videos. That'll bring us up to the end. That's good. And I've actually had these on my radar for a minute and I haven't watched them, so I just want to get through them.
Article, I kind of suspect how people will act, whether they will boo or cheer. I kind of figure out the type of emotion that they will express when I read the article. Unfortunately, this time I'm in a little bit of a pickle. I genuinely have no idea how you guys or other individuals will react when they will have to pick a side between the Israeli government or Greta Thunberg. Because on one hand, I do imagine that seeing Greta Thunberg in an Israeli prison cell with her angry face asking "How dare you" is going to make for very interesting headlines.
Yeah.
And it's going to have like really funny moments.
Yeah. No doubt about
But
it.
on the other hand, like seeing Israel like finally getting humiliated by a person that used to be a little girl, the type of person that brought authoritarianism and environmentalist ideology into Europe, you know, that also stings. So it's quite difficult to make a prediction here. On which side will people be? I personally, I have to say that I don't hate Greta Thunberg. I don't hate her at all. I know this is controversial, and it's not because
I don't think I have hate for her, but I do have a lot of like disdain for her message and her probably in general. I think it'd be fair to say I hate her parents because they seem like evil people that have, you know, basically annihilated their daughter's mental state to the point where she's like, I think she actually believes the world is ending. I think she actually believes this. And she gets that from her parents. And it does just seem like, you know, if you were telling your kid that to the point where she is freaking out on a daily basis and the only way she can not, you know, be basically like suicidal is to be out doing activist work, you probably have failed as a parent.
Because I found Jesus and I'm compassionate, I simply don't hate her because I don't want to be manipulated. Like, I completely understand what the activists did, right? Like you had the environmentalists and bankers and powerful people that wanted to push for authoritarianism in Europe. They wanted more government control, and for the government to exercise that control, they needed more funding. And so they increased the taxes from the people in order to increase surveillance and power for the governments. And of course, like some of the corporations love this because now the government's being in power, you know, they can push for stuff like CBDC.
Yeah, they can, you know, their lobbying money goes further. If the government's more powerful, you know, there's still the same amount of politicians. So, you know, your $1 million goes a lot further if you're, you know, buying influence because those politicians have more power.
And other
you
things
can get them
that
to do more.
benefits the banks. And so, like, they wanted this, and it's like, how do we package it to the public? How do we convince the average Joe to be okay with giving away his freedoms, with being okay getting more taxed? And the way that they did it is they chose a 17-year-old girl, and they paraded her around. You know, they created this mythos around
I think
her.
she was younger when she started.
And so all of the outrage and all of the indignation that would have normally gone to the banks, to the politicians, were used like a lightning rod to go directly on Greta. And so, like, the politicians would push for environmentalism. They would have, like, their own leftist supporters that would back them. And anyone that complained, it's like, so you're a misogynist because you don't like Greta. And it's also, like, the thing that the West is suffering from right now, which I think is a huge problem, and it's a huge detriment for everyone involved. But it's the infantilization of teenagers. Like,
okay. Yeah. I can see that. Like, you're not, like, these people are not kids.
Treating 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds as if they're infants, right? So I remember when Greta was asking politicians, how dare you? And she was having speeches in front of Obama and stuff. If you even suggested that she should have a debate, if you even suggested that she should be confronted, people would say, well, she's but a child. Like, why are you being like this, you know? Because on one hand, the mythos was, look how smart and educated the new generation is. Look how forward-thinking they are. Like, they're already trying to save the planet. They're aware of stuff that the adults are blind. And on the other hand, it's like, well, she's but a child. Like, of course she's innocent, and she shouldn't be able to have any types of debates. Even though when I was a teenager, I remember that I was doing hyper-complex numbers in 10th grade. Yeah, I was doing hyper-complex numbers. I was also studying quantum physics, like not the advanced type, but like an introductory, so at least you know it exists. I was studying genetics. Like, this is what you would
What is hyper-complex numbers? Is that like calculus or something? In 10th grade? I don't know what hyper-complex numbers is. I don't know if that's like a specific form. I'm going to actually look that up. Hyper-complex numbers. I don't know what hyper-complex numbers is. I mean, obviously... Oh, okay. Mathematics, hyper-complex number is a traditional term for an element of a finite-dimensional unital algebra over the field of real numbers. The study of hyper-complex numbers in the late 19th century forms the basis of modern group representation theory. Let's think. Okay. A definition of a hypercomplex number is an element of a unital, but not necessarily associative or commutative. Finite dimensional algebra over the real numbers. Elements are generated with real number coefficients for a basis. Where possible, it is conventional to choose the basis so that technical approach to hypercomplex numbers directs attention to the first dimension of the two. Finite dimensional unitary identity element. Okay. Interesting. Field of real numbers. Huh.
Something
nope, don't know what that is.
Romania, in like at the school. But anyway, right, it is what it is. The thing is, like, Greta Thunberg herself, I don't think like she's a person with thoughts and opinions of her own. No. Right? Like, she's a grifter. She knows how to grift. She knows how to make money out of nothing. And so she's kind of like a paid actress, right? Like a mercenary, if you will. Like, if you have a leftist cause, you hire her, and then she's the face of your movement. Right? And she reads a script, and she says the things, and she does what she needs to do. This is what Greta Thunberg is. Like, if Greta Thunberg wouldn't exist on planet Earth, right, the environmentalist movement would still have happened. They would have found another. Like, she is replaceable. She is like a mascot. She is the face. It doesn't really
that's
matter,
true. And she's literally a mascot.
And so, this is why I don't hate her. It's like, you know, hating an actor. Like, that's cool and all. But at the end of the day, an actor is just playing a role. And if it's not them, there will be someone else. Now, sure, you can hate, like, personally, like, how would you allow yourself to be used that way? And the answer is, well, she's probably getting, like, tens of millions of dollars for doing it.
Probably. She is definitely loaded.
Her recent publicity stunt was going into Gaza in order to bring symbolic aid. And the way she did it was very interesting, right? Like, she didn't do it like the plebs, because there was like this whole big movement where a lot of leftists like went to Gaza and they went through Egypt, and the Egyptians prevented them from doing that. And you had like this leftist soy individual. It's like, how can you do this? They are your Muslims brothers, let us through. And you had a woman beating him with a shoe. Like, I've never seen that. Did you guys saw that on Twitter?
It was insane.
I have never seen women being violent in public like that, you know, towards strangers. Like, literally, there was a riot. Like, the leftists were making a human chain over there doing their protests, and, like, the Egyptians, like, they did a riot. And there was this woman, like, assaulting the guy with a shoe. Apparently, it's very insulting in Islamic countries. But Greta didn't do that, right? Because, like, again, the people backing her understand culture and understand the human nature, and they know history, so they're aware of what would have happened. And okay, of course, like, imagine the optics of Greta Thunberg being beaten with a shoe. No, they took a ship, right, and they tried going towards Pakistan by the way of the sea. And so, like,
Palestine, I'm guessing,
they knew that they were going to be encountered by the Israeli Guard, right, the naval patrols, and they would be told to turn back, and that was literally the footage that they wanted. They wanted the footage of Greta Thunberg being told, like, no, you're not allowed to bring aid. And of course, look how oppressed the Palestinians are. If I was Israel, I would have allowed her. And that would have really fucked up with her plans. again, like, I'm pretty sure that the people there know what's in Gaza, and they know how they would have welcomed her.
And I think the other aspect, wasn't there another aspect that's like the coastline of Gaza is like shallow, so like they can't actually bring like aid ships like in. I mean, maybe she's on a boat that like has a small enough draft that she'd be able to actually like land. But I think a lot of it is like they actually can't like harbor off the coast, because I remember there was like a whole thing of like they're trying to bring in like aid ships to Gaza, but it was like they can't actually like get into Gaza, so they have to be like, I don't know, like a mile offshore, and then they would have to like ferry stuff back and forth, and it would be like insanely like obviously like dangerous and stuff. So I mean, it's entirely I don't know what the draft on her boat was. I mean, it's entirely possible that she could have made it in to the coast, but it's also entirely possible that, you know, the ship that they were on straight up like, oh, like we're gonna bring symbolic aid. I'm like, no, you couldn't, not possible. They would have been on like a dinghy or something like that, like, you know, just rowing in and be like, okay, we have like a box of chicken fingers. That was it. We couldn't actually bring you anything.
And so if I was part of the Israeli high command, I would say, oh, whose ships does that? Greta Thunberg? Let her through. Unless they have like something really nasty to hide, okay? Like if they have something really nasty to hide over there, then maybe that's why they wouldn't let her through. But now she wants to do it again. And now the Israeli government is saying, yeah, if you do it again, we're going to put you in a terrorist cell. And so I'm looking at this and I cannot just, you know, express awe. It's like, look at this Chad government. You know, this is a government with a big fat cock. Like, why can't we have governments like that here?
Yeah.
What's stopping us? And the answer is like weak politicians. Because if I was a right-wing politician, for instance, in England, right, I would like write down all of these things, you know, that Israel is doing, how they're deporting people, how they're treating a member of that's a subversive actor. And then I would just, you know, go in public speeches and I would say, we need Israeli policies. Right? Like, I would definitely, you know, go on ironically and I would say, like, Israel is a nation that I look towards with awe and admiration. Like they're strong people, well-determined. We need to be like them. And then I would just say, like, yeah, whenever you have, like, a immigration problem or anything.
It's funny. But it is like, it's funny because it's like, yeah, you know what? Like, I can see it. I can see it. You got problems. You want solutions. Maybe these are not the solutions you love, but they are solutions.
Like that, we need Israeli politics. We need to have like strong Israeli mindset in order to deal with these types of politics. Like when it comes to deportations, when it comes to dealing with subversive elements, like we need to do what would Israel do? You know, you have like an NGO that's constantly bringing in illegal migrants from one place to another. And if I was a right-wing politician, I would be like, well, this is terrible. What would Israel do? What would their policy be? And you'd literally like look, you know, search for pre-existing situations where that happened in Israel. What measures did they take? And that's what you're going to take. If they call you far right, you're going to call them anti-Semitic. It's like, Israel is not a far right state, right? Like they're a bastion of democracy. They are the beacon for the rest of us. If they say that you're mocking Jewish people, how am I mocking? Like this is literally what Israel is doing. No, it's like, no.
Yeah.
Like as a rhetoric, right? As a talking point, I think it would be very interesting, and I think that it should actually be more mainstream in politics. Like have right wingers, like unironically decide policy with evidence supported by facts. It's like, well, this is what Israel done, right? So,
yeah. I mean, again, you know, maybe not the solutions you like, maybe not, you know, the best solution, but it's a solution, and it's not like you don't have problems. It is funny to hear this from somebody who's like not involved in this, you know, because like you can't really say like, because he's Romanian, you can't really say that like Romania has like skin in the game in terms of this. Like Russia, Ukraine, okay, sure, they got it maybe a little bit more skin in the game. They're a little bit closer to this, but with like the Israel, Gaza, Hamas, whatever thing, you're like, okay, this guy's totally like completely divorced from that situation whatsoever. So they can actually look at it as like pretty objective. Like America, you know, there has to be some other weird calculation in there where you're like, okay, like there's a lot of money getting funded, funneled to Israel from America, but then also you're thinking, oh, well, they've got, like you're getting influence in the region. So like maybe it's worth it, maybe it's not, maybe it's something not. But like when you get someone who's like totally like, nah, I'm not, like I couldn't care less. It's gonna have no effect on me whatsoever, one way or the other. It's interesting to hear their opinion on that. All right, so I think with this, I think we're gonna say I'm done for today. Yeah. Good luck in all your endeavors. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Farewell for now. Tomorrow, we'll be doing a Hollow Knight again. So look forward to that if you're looking forward to stuff.